Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Tuesday, and so we're here to talk about video games. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast about video games. I'm your host. My name is Jeff Gerstmann. Hello, and welcome to the program. This week, we're going to be talking about some newly released video games and some news about them, as well as your emails. Yeah, I know. That's pretty wild. Gosh. So we're still kind of on the fresh other side of having a child and bringing a child home and all that stuff. My eldest. That's a weird thing to say. My daughter, my 4-year-old daughter, has been having some trouble at nighttime lately in terms of going to bed to staying asleep. Waking up in the middle of the night and making a whole lot of noise. And not really sure what to. I went through a phase. I don't know if it's nightmares. I don't know what the actual situation is, but she will get so worked up that she will actually vomit. So yesterday I vacuumed the carpet and did all this stuff to clean that up, and it's we're just banging our heads against the wall here trying to figure this out. But it's I look at it as a lot of it is it's a natural thing that happens. The making it the messy part of it is maybe less so, but yeah, trying to figure that out. It's like, but there's no the thing about kids. There's no, you can't rationalize with them in a permanent way all the time. There's some things that you can get through to them and it will stick, but things like fear, things like like that stuff is so hard to, it's hard to get through to them. And yeah, I don't know, it's something that we have dealt with off and on for probably the past year and change, in different ways, but like this is, yeah, it's interesting. Interesting is maybe not the word for it. I mean, it's sad. It's sad to see her go through it. And as someone who does not especially like cleaning up all that stuff, it's you. I don't love it either. But there's always this temptation, and I don't think it's like the thing where I play a lot of video games or whatever. But there's a temptation to look at these sorts of scenarios as like problems that can be solved. If you're just like, if I can just figure out the one right thing to do to work my way through this, then it will all be fine. As opposed to, this is a process and, she's going to grow out of this one way or the other, but are there things we can do to ease her mind on this to kind of coax her through it a little bit faster than maybe it would happen naturally. I don't know how old I was, but I went through a phase where I think I've talked about this before, but like, I was just like, I had the worst, most horrific, this was in elementary school. But the worst nightmares, the worst, like, the just like I wake up at night and I would have these scenarios where like I clearly must have been still asleep, because I don't think I was, this clearly could not have been real, but I was having these scenarios where I would try to scream and couldn't, and I had become terrified of the logo of a local television station. The thinking is that I must have stayed up late and seen some sort of horrendous movie or something on the station, or something. But yeah, it is. So when I see, yes, so exactly, Rad Jacobs. When I see all this like analog horror stuff that's become popular lately, I just look at it and go like, yeah, yeah, that stuff has lived in my head since the 80s. So yeah, where I would see the logo like burned onto my sheets or a wall, or or something like that, and just super weird, right? But that was always that was kind of my thing, and there was nothing. I don't think there was really anything my parents could do to stop it, and they kind of laughed about it at a certain point after it was not a thing anymore. I don't think in the moment they were laughing about it. I don't remember what their reaction was really, but it was like this yeah, it was this horrendous feeling, and so like I can only map the experiences of my children back to my own and try to think about like, well, I went through this is slightly similar. I went through this, yeah, so like you kind of have to like sit there and think it through from the perspective of like, when I was a kid, this shit seemed like the realest shit imaginable, and it seemed unstoppable to the point where I don't think I talked about it much to anyone, because it seemed so like it held such power over me for a time that felt like it was a year, but maybe it was 6 weeks. I couldn't really tell you now. And so, there's the balancing act of like, how much of this is something like that, and then how much of this is she's, trying to find ways to push our buttons and get her way and get what she wants, and not go to sleep and do that. There's little bits and pieces of that kind of mixed into all of this as well. And so it's interesting. And so that's on my mind. Before we get going, like that's been on my mind. That's something that has kind of reared its head again after not being, after not being a thing for a good long time. But yeah, Accolade in the chat talks about wind down time. Yeah, the last hour of the day is kind of like, it's me and her usually, before my wife takes her upstairs for bath time and bed and everything like that. But she gets kind of 2 hours, I think, of, I would call it wind down time. That's usually the first hour of that. When I'm hanging out with her, she'll have a snack, and that's when she'll play games. That's when she'll grab the Switch and she'll play some Mario Kart. But she's not really playing much Mario Kart lately. She's just watching videos. She was watching the Detective Pikachu trailer again last night. And all of that stuff. But yeah, then she goes up and she has her bath time and gets some stories and all of this. Like, it's a very gentle couple of hours usually. And then sometimes at the end of all that, she decides she doesn't want to go to sleep, or rather she, gets worried about something and gets worked up about something, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I don't know. Like, a lot of it is very natural stuff that I just look at as like kid stuff. And then there's little bits and pieces that I'm just like, parts of this seem correctable. Parts of this seem like something that we have to keep working on one way or the other. But we're not there yet. So yeah. She's also been watching the Super Mario Brothers Wonder trailer a lot. And so she was very taken aback when suddenly she saw me playing Super Mario Brothers Wonder. And it was suddenly a real game. She doesn't want to play it. She really did for a long time. And then I let her. And she tried it and kind of bashed her head against it for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe not even 10. I was just like, I don't think I want to play any more of this game. And then she handed it back to me. We tried the, because they made characters, they built characters into that game that can't die. Basically, they're like, oh well, if you play as the Yoshis or if you play as Nabbit, then you can't die. The downside is I think you can't collect the wonder seeds, or the wonder flowers, which are an item in a level that will change the level around and give you access to a different areas, and there's usually one of the wonder seeds, which are the items you're collecting throughout the game, is found whenever you find a wonder flower. So I guess they can't go through that, and they can't turn into an elephant. Yoshi can't turn into an elephant because Yoshi is the elephant. This is a cool idea, I suppose, especially with it being a multiplayer game. If you're like, oh, well, here, you play as player 2 and you play invincibly and we'll play together. The catch comes in is that, well, she's 4, so she doesn't really understand the idea of jumping over a thing. And so she has a hard time jumping over stuff. She can jump, but it's hard to jump over. But more importantly than that, she doesn't care about Yoshi. She doesn't care about Nabbit. She wants to play as the princess or Daisy, and that's it. And so the idea that they had the opportunity to make it so you could just toggle a mode on for any character and make that character a kid-friendly character, and instead said, no, it's only the worst characters in the game, is really stupid. It's one of those things I went hearing about it ahead of the release of the game. I was like, that sounds like a good idea. Oh, having some characters that are, kid friendly or whatever, that sounds like a good way to handle it. But in practice, kids have favorites, and if they can't play as their favorite, they don't want to play at all. And so trying to get her to play as Nabbit or one of these fucking Yoshis, she's like, absolutely not interested at all. Let me play as Daisy. And then she plays as Daisy for 5 minutes, dies a bunch, can't jump over anything anyway, and is just like, fuck this. She practically was like, man, fuck this game, and handed it back to me and walked away. I was like, wow, all right, that's that, I guess. It's a shame. There was a part of me that was kind of like hoping, like, maybe this will work out. Like, it's a stretch because she, again, I know she's not really great at jumping over stuff, so I know that's going to be a constant problem. But it's she's just not even interested anymore. So whatever, which is a shame because that game's fucking incredible. Like, damn, kid, you're missing out on one of the best games to come out in the year 2023. The Super Mario Wonder, which they should have just called it Super Mario Wonder. They should have gone further in the direction of attaching it to Super Mario World a little bit, by just dropping the brothers. It's fantastic. It is. It's incredibly inventive. It is. It is. Parts of it feel very bespoke. You have moments that just come and go with new characters that just enemies that you don't see again, and just the levels that are built around one singular. You'll have levels that'll last 15 seconds or something like that. And then you'll have but of course, much longer levels. You have puzzle levels. The diversity of design from level to level is incredibly impressive. And so you're always seeing something you haven't seen yet. And that's just fantastic. The levels they've taken, there's no time limit in the levels, so you have time to really explore, which is good because they build secrets into that game that are similar to Super Mario World, which had all of its hidden exits and all of that. You've got moments in those levels that are incredibly missable, and it's more than just oh, I missed a coin and I have to go back and get it. It's oh, there's a whole section of this level that leads to this thing that I need to do to get this, and and that's just fantastic. Like, that's what I've been missing from so many of the more recent, the 3D, 2D games, your new Super Mario Brothers and stuff, where they really just said, like, I don't know, man, just get the coins. And if you don't get enough coins, at some point you're going to be locked out of these levels. And you're like, oh, great. It just has I said it last night. I streamed a little bit of the game last night. There's a video up on YouTube if you want to watch that. Like, this is a game that feels so new that they don't need to write the word new on the box. You know, like, you feel it. You feel it every step of the way. And it's not just, it's got power-ups. You know, you can shoot bubbles. You can turn into a frickin' elephant and all of that. But, like, really, it is about these wonder flowers and just the levels themselves. You know, you find the wonder flower, the world goes through a change, and those changes have been like so. Like, sometimes it's just like, sometimes it literally does pop up a thing and you have to like kind of collect 5 coins or something like that. But it is the level around you has changed enough that still even feels rewarding. But you'll have some of these scenarios where there was an underwater level and you get the wonder flower and it flips it so that the air is now the water and the water is now the air. And so you're swimming up high on the screen and then sinking down into the air. There's another one that literally turns the background into the floor and suddenly turns the game into a top-down game for like a couple of minutes. You're like, what the fuck just happened? Like, it's such a good... There are so many great moments in that game where you collect this wonder flower and you're just like, what the fuck just happened? Holy shit. And it keeps doing that. I'm only, a couple worlds in. That's the game doesn't seem super long. And also it's not super difficult. I mean, if you want to 100% it, I think that is something that you're going to find challenge if you look for it. They put difficulties on the levels themselves, so you'll see like a 1 to 5 star rating for some of these levels. They have badges, so rather than give the characters individual powers the way that Luigi has always had his dumb jump and Princess can float and all of that sort of stuff, instead you equip a badge when you go into a level, and some of the badges are just like, hey, you start with a mushroom, so you're always super. But one of the first ones you get is a gliding ability. You pull your hat out and it pups out like a parachute or whatever, and you can kind of glide further. That's what I've been using most of the time. There's one that gives you Luigi's jump, and so that way you can still, at least there, you can still play as the princess but have Luigi's jump if you need it or want it or whatever. And that stuff's been cool. Like, you're finding these interesting new badges that you're like, oh wait, now that in this specific level that might be really handy to have, like the ability to wall jump straight up once each jump. Like you hit a wall and then you can jump up and then you can jump off. Like, that's really cool. There's one that makes it so you just jump permanently. You're bouncing like a pogo stick, but you can jump higher than you could normally. And so that's crazy, but like in specific situations you might go, that might be something for this specific level or this specific design or whatever. I think it looks nice. Like, there's been I feel like a lot of the only real negativity I've seen about the game is people complaining about the flowers in the game. Like, they have distributed a bunch of flowers around the level and they talk when you get near them. And they'll just like pop up and, if there's one up high in an area that you might not get to, when you jump up there, it might say like, how'd you get up here? And the voice is really, I've been watching a lot of Blue's Clues lately. So like that's keep that in mind. But like it reminds me of like children's television in a way, where it's just like, here's this like conversation that's not happening for good reason. It's just like, it's happening because it's like, oh, we're going to convey a little bit of information to you, but not really, not enough to matter. But like you don't need these here probably, but it's like, wow, what did you do it? You know, I don't mind the flowers all that much. I don't think that they're like super useful, but also they're spread out enough that it's not that big a deal. Some people are like, I've got to shut those things out, and you can turn off the voice if you want to. Some people are setting the voice to Japanese on them as well, which you can do. But it hasn't really, you know, that has not really been a thing. That has not really bothered me one bit in my time with the game. The thing that does bother me, other than the stuff with my daughter and, you know, like the they could have done better on some of that stuff, I think. But like the thing that bothers me about it is the audio. Some of the things they did, and stylistically, it's a really great idea, but it feels like they went back to every single sound effect and touched it and redid it and thought about it. It's like, oh, well, hey, let's try to make everything sound like it's a real instrument being played. And so when Mario jumps, it's a little string band, a little boom, you know, a little string instrument kind of thing. And when he shoots a fireball, I don't know where that sound comes from. But I really don't like them. I really don't like a lot of the character audio. Like when you do a butt stomp, you know, if you're in the air and you push down on the D-pad and he flips around and drops, if you do it from high enough, there's like a little fanfare when he does it. And it goes, brr, brr, and that one's not so bad, but like it feels like that was the idea, right? Is hey, we want to make all of these things say, you know, we all want all of these things to kind of sound like instruments. And I think that, again, it's a really cool idea, but I think the execution of it, I just don't like it. I just don't like the way those things sound. I think the fireball just sounds, it doesn't even, I'm not necessarily saying like, I can't believe they changed it. Because they changed a lot of stuff. It's a different Mario voice. It's a different, not that different. I mean, it's, you know, hey. I just don't think that those sound effects sound good. I think they sound bad. And I think that if they had done a better job on those effects, I think that I would, you know, again, on paper, the idea of let's do all these sound effects this specific way is really cool. It's a really great idea. I see why they would do it. I see why they would like let's try and mix it up. Like it's a great idea. I just don't think that some of the sound effects in the game are good. And if they had taken that idea and done a better job with the jump and done a better job with some of that stuff, I think that they, you know, some of that stuff would be better. That's all. Pretty minor complaint at the end of the day. The game has kind of online support. You can play with friends, but it's like Fable, where you kind of are seeing, well, in Fable, I guess it was just the little balls, but you know, you see silhouettes of other players, both in the overworld and in game. And in game, the other players can kind of help you. If you hit down, and I think it's the X button, the top, the triangle, yeah, X button on a Switch controller, you will pop out a little standee, a little cardboard, you know, a little wood cutout of like your character that'll just like be positioned there. And if you get hit, you become a ghost for like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, not a long time, but in that time, if another player's silhouette touches you, you come back to life. And if there are no players around, if you can make your way over to a standee, and the standee will bring you back to life as well. I think that's a really inventive, kind of cool way to do it. And yeah, some people are plopping you can, sometimes you'll see a standee just hovering in the air, and you can't place them in the air. You have to be on the ground when you place them. And so that means when you see one up in the air, you're like, wait a minute, someone was able to stand here somehow. Is there a hidden block? Can I push something over here to So it's a kind of a way to kind of hint at secrets as well, which is awesome. And so it's just like this extra little thing here that I think really it really makes the game feel richer and a little deeper in execution to have other players, and you'll see their silhouettes, or if they're off screen, you'll see them off to the side, and you know their little icon. And so sometimes you'll see an icon way up high somewhere, and you'll be like, well, wait, okay, there must be something up there. So just getting these deep little hints of what else is possible in a level is really great. It's a really cool idea. It doesn't necessarily give things away per se, but if you know what to look for, you can get a hint about where secrets are. And they've gone and made some levels deliberately shitty. There's like a level I played last night in World 2 that's like a puzzle level, and so it's just like you need to find these 5 coins to get a Wonder Seed, and they don't really give you a lot of hints as to what you need to do it. It's like, here's some hidden blocks that if you didn't know to jump here, then you would never find it. But because other players are plopping these things down, there are players that are kind of letting you know, like, oh, this is an area where you should look, or hey, here's a spot where you could jump or maybe push a thing or do something. There's something you can do here. And I think that's really great. I think it allows for like a little minimalistic collaboration in a neat way. And I'm having a really good time with it. I'm also taking my time with it. The thing I'll say is, I'm having a good time with it, but I definitely will, after like 4 or 5 levels of it, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to put this down for a while and I'll come back to it later. Like, I'm not finding the immediate, like, I've got to burn my way through this as quickly as possible for whatever reason. But I'm coming back to it kind of on a daily basis and knocking out a handful of levels and moving on. And I've decided to not obsess over 100%ing every single level as I get there, and I'm just going to try to come back to stuff. It'll track, so there's 3 coins in each level to collect. It tracks whether you hit the top of the flagpole or not, and also a level will have some individual number of Wonder Seeds, usually 2. Some of them have 3. The smaller, weirder levels will usually only have 1. And the only limits I've seen so far is on Wonder Seeds, which I've always had plenty of up to this point, because it's, you know, you're getting 1 or 2 per level, and then it'll be like, you need to have 5 to move past this point, and you're like, dog, I have 9. We're going. And so that has not really been a big blockade. If that becomes a big blockade late in the game, and suddenly it's like, oh, now you've got to go back and hunt them down in these levels, and that'll be maybe a mild bummer, I guess. But I'm really impressed with it. I think that they have found a fantastic way to kind of reinvent's not the word, but you know, to build onto the 2D Super Mario pantheon. I think that they have found an exciting new way to design levels. I think that the Wonder Seeds, the way that they change levels in unique and weird ways, is so much fun to see and experience. That I would almost say that that's like, if there was a thing to spoil in that game, it's that sort of stuff, you know? It's like, hey, you know, in this level, the Wonder Seed does this. Like, no, just you should go see that. You should go see that shit, because it's cool. It's really cool. And yeah, I don't know. It's I think from that first trailer, it always looked like it was cool and it looked like intriguing. But I think there was a part of me that thought like, oh, well, there's going to be this, you know, this Wonder Flower thing, but it's probably going to be the same every time. Or like, you know, there'll be like one effect per world. In this world is the one where the pipes end up moving like worms or snakes. And then in this world, it does this. But no, it's every goddamn level is something different. And so that's fantastic. It's just a great, weird take on the 2D Mario experience, and they have made a lot of really smart choices about how it is built and so on and so forth. And it is probably the best this game has been. And again, I have not finished it yet, but like with the way I'm feeling right now about it, if it maintains it like this is at least the best 2D Mario game since Super Mario World, which is crazy. Which is a crazy sentence to say. That like it is at least the second best 2D Mario game. At least. That's a weird concept, right? To be sitting here like this far down to be like, huh. But it's really amazing. It's really amazing. So you should probably play it. You should probably play it. You say it's better than Lost Levels? Look, hey. I love Super Mario Brothers 2. I love both Super Mario Brothers 2s. In later years, as a kid, I really loved the American Super Mario 2, and then as I got older, I grew to love. Once I was able to get my hands on it, I guess through the Super Mario All Stars was probably the first time I actually played it. But now playing, I went and bought a Famicom disk system and all of that, and being able to play it in its original form and all of that. I have a real love for Super Mario Brothers 2, Japan, if you will. The level pack where they said like, nah, fuck you guys. Where they just made a game and said, nah, fuck you guys. These levels are fucked up. Fuck you guys. I think that's great. I think those are great games. I love whatever. People like they don't shit on it, but like Super Mario Brothers 1, I don't know. Hey, we're gonna rank all these 8-bit Nintendo games at some point. At least the ones that came out in North America. So Super Mario Brothers 2 is not a part of that list. Or at least the Japanese, the real Super Mario 2, not a part of that list. But yeah, it's I like that first game as well. I go back to it quite a lot. It's I'm always like testing out some emulator somewhere, and I'm like, Super Mario Brothers 1. Like, so I'll just like load it up and play it for 5 or 10 minutes or something. That's a great game too. But yeah, Wonder is astounding in a lot of ways. I'm like kind of shocked. Like, you expect a level of quality, and I think the new Super Mario Brothers games were certainly not bad games. I think in retrospect, people have gone much colder on them than I would have thought. I think people like really kind of talk a lot of shit about the new Super Mario Brothers U, like all of those games get and there are aspects of those games that I certainly don't love. I feel like they were fine at the time for what they were, but yeah, like they're not necessarily exciting. And I think a lot of the way that the difficulty was structured in those games were it was built in such a way that was just like, it was like they made it kind of boring. The way that they handled difficulty here. So I think the way they handled difficulty in Wonder is really cool, because occasionally you'll just like hit a 4-star level and it'll be like, here's a challenge to do with this specific badge. Equip this wall jump badge and do this 4-star challenge. And you're like, holy smokes. The enemies don't fucking stop and dance like they do in those games. Now, when you get close to an enemy, they do react. You get close to a Koopa, you get close to a fucking turtle. If he's walking in your direction and he sees you, he fucking narrows his eyes. He's like, what the fuck? Come on, motherfucker. Like, he kind of narrows his eyes a little bit because he knows there's danger ahead. Goombas will kind of cower. Like, fuck. Like, they react in fun ways, too. Like, it's really something else, man. There's just a long list of cool shit they did and they put into this game. And it's great that they still got it. They can still pull it out, and some of the developers on this game, some of the names on this game harken back to one of the earliest games in the franchise. And that's crazy. And it's crazy. I was also thinking kind of a crazy year for the Switch. You know, in a like if this is going to be the last full year, the last holiday season for the Switch, to send it out with Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Brothers Wonder, like, and there's other stuff. There's Mario RPG. You know, obviously the Metroid remake came out. Some people like Pikmin. I don't know. The idea that they took 2023 and said, all right, we're going to have these really kind of weird flips on some of our other concepts come out this year. We're going to close it out with Mario and Zelda, but not the way we opened it. Like, we may have opened it with Mario and Zelda in ways that, you know, in ways that felt, well, I guess Breath of the Wild didn't necessarily feel traditional by Zelda standards, but by open world game standards, maybe a little. Anyway, they opened it with shit that made sense, and then they closed it out and said, nah, what if there was a whole underground world full of crazy shit and you could build cars? And they're like, no, what if you took weird flowers and then it was like this vague drug trip sort of thing that made Mario fucking weird? Check this shit out. Like, they had a freedom and a confidence about them with those two games in particular. I think that there is some kinship there, and the idea that we're closing out the Switch, if this is indeed the final holiday season for the Switch, before there's a successor, it's pretty wild, the directions they took this stuff in. So I'm impressed. I hope I am impressed with this. This is someone recommended. I've tracked one of these down. I was at the store the other day, and someone said Valencia Orange is my favorite. Someone in chat, I think, said that Valencia Orange was their favorite flavor of rain, and so I picked it up. It's a Rain Storm, which is these small cans, these tiny cans, these skinny puppies. Of clean energy. No high fructose corn syrup, no artificially altered color, no artificial flavors, and no BS claims. So I don't know. We're going to try this thing. I like the regular Rain, but I think I did have one of the other Rain Storm flavors, and found it to be a little, I don't know, dull, a little boring, a little too clean for my tastes. Let's get the rankings up here and then drink this thing and see what's up. We have 147 drinks on the list. Number 1, of course, being Rockstar Zero Fruit Punch. Number 147, of course, being Faxicandi Booster Twisted Strawberry. Ugh. My stomach feels bad even thinking about it. Improves focus, accelerated metabolism. It's vegan as well. Well, great. Let's see. Smells nice and orangey. Oh, but like a real orange. It smells more like a real orange than an orange soda. That's a nice. Let's find out. This is fine. It's not as sweet. I wish it was a little bit sweeter. I wish they had artificially sweetened this. It's not quite like an Orangina. You know, an Orangina is almost pulpy, right? But by being, you know, their whole thing being like clean energy or whatever, like it's almost like it's watery. Like the flavor is not as strong. as I would like. It's good though. This is yeah. It's good. It just tastes a little watered down. So let's see. That's I mean, it's worlds better than the Celsius sparkling orange, I think. Gosh. I don't, it's better than a G Fuel sour chug rug. It's better than G Fuel Miami Nights, which I only became partial to because I had a full case of it to get through. And by the end of it, I was like, oh no, that was the Miami Cola I was thinking of. Miami Nights is something different, right? Miami Nights is that Dirt Nasty song with Kesha on it. It's good for what it is. As far as like if you want Dirt Nasty to record a song that isn't just him talking about his dick, I think the best you can expect is something like Miami Nights. It's a decent little track. You could have heard it in some kind of club or something. It's not super dance. It's more dancey than his typical output. Andre Legacy is not on Miami Nights rapping about coke. But what if he was? I mean, I feel like Andre Legacy and Beardo put out a couple of tracks under the name Want, W-A-N-T, We Are Not Terrorists, and just threw them up on Bandcamp. And they're good. They made videos for them. Beardo's, I think, significant other sings the hook on it. On one of the songs, and I think she's really good on it too. It's just they're fun couple of tracks. I wish that they would do a full record. Beardo and his lady friend do that. Was it Minus Light? I think is the name of the thing that they do. And that's a pretty good little. They put out some decent music as well. I think Beardo's he's always too busy on tour with what's his face? The guy from The Strokes. The Voids, that's the name of that band. It used to be Julian and the Voids, and they just shortened it. Anyway. Love that. Beardo, Andre Legacy. Man. They should do more. They should put out more music. Anyway, where were we? This is not as good as a Red Bull Sugar Free. It's not as good as a C4 Orange Slice, which, again, is that super artificial type of thing. I would take it over a Ghost Warhead's Sour Green Apple. So we're dialing it in. It's no Bucked Up Energy Gym and Juice, which is pretty good. Man, it's all the way down to number 50. It's crazy how many. It's going to be interesting watching the Nintendo list get like this, of like games in the top 100 being like, oh, that's an all-time classic, and it's number 80. You're like, oh, right, yeah, I guess there's some freaking bangers here, huh? It's better than G Fuel Hype Sauce. It's better than Ghost Bubblicious Strawberry Splash. The Bubblicious drinks are a little awkward. It's the Ultra Citra. Yeah, I feel like the dividing line for this drink is it better or worse than Monster Energy Ultra Citra? Because it's not as good as Rockstar Strawberry Peach. It's better than the Redcon 1 Peach Sour Peach Rings. Ultra Citra's okay. It's just not. Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah. We're gonna slot that in right here. Rain Storm Valencia Orange. And that is our new number 53. Congratulations. Where's the threshold for I would happily drink that? That's a good question. I would happily drink that is a different is a different list. I think it might, the line might start at number 69, Redcon 1's Vice City. I would happily drink that. But then you get into like, this is fine. You could drink this. This is all right. And then you kind of get down into the Zoa zone, which for the longest time, Zoa was the dividing line between drinkable and not drinkable. Like you could drink a Zoa, but you're not having a good time. But I would say this stuff near the bottom here, Hint Energy is fine. It's just too watery. The flavor's too weak. I feel sickly when I drink drinks that only have a hint of flavor in them, and it's like meant to be watery, but the water doesn't taste good either. The water's off somehow. Like there's a real disconnect for me there. So, but this is this lower part of the list here. This Rockstar Experience Marshmallow is garbage. It's fucking terrible. It's disgusting. Anyway, let's move on. Metal Gear is back. And that's about it. I don't know. Konami released what is the official name of this thing? Metal Gear Solid Master Collection. Oh, they've renamed the games on Steam. Nice. Last night I posted an image to Twitter so this is a collection of Metal Gear games. And when you buy them, they all show up in your library as separate games. That's on PlayStation 5. That means you have 5 different launchable things on your menu. On Steam, it means there are 5 different installable things. And one of them is bonus content. So they didn't integrate anything. It's just a separate application for the bonus content. One for MGS 1, one for 2, one for 3, and then one for Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 for the MSX. This is a collection they've put out before, basically, right? I mean, this is what the 360 thing they put out or whatever. That came to multiple platforms, but I forget what they called that collection. But they've put it out here in a really bare bones way. I think that when we think about compilations of classic games, I think about Digital Eclipse as the gold standard, as a standard bearer for this format, for this form. I think the way that they have done it in terms of how they've integrated extras and all of that. Now, obviously, not every developer is going to do that. That said, Konami has done better because they teamed up with Digital Eclipse to put out that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collection. And so this thing feels like they're just like, here. It's a collection of 5 games. And they haven't really done a ton of work. Yeah, Night Dive has done some good stuff. Night Dive is not really in the compilation or collection business, but yes, Night Dive has done some really good stuff when it comes to bringing back older games and remastering or whatever. Not that I don't know. They did Turok, right? At some point, you just go like, all right, you're just choosing bad games to put out again. I mean, why are we doing this? I loaded up MGS1 and wanted to play some of that, and it was just like, yeah, this kind of looks grimy, and they've got an extra menu on the front of it, but then when you get in there, you're like, oh, this is just the PlayStation game. Like you've, which is fine. You want accurate recreations of those games because they can be harder to find these days and blah, blah, blah. But there's so much more they could do. Well, look, I guess you could fall back onto the excuse of well, actually they couldn't because they're never going to talk to Hideo Kojima again. And they're never going to bring him in for interviews. They're never going to be like, let's talk to the creator of this game. I mean, they didn't even thank him in the new credits that they made for the collection, right? So I assume he's in the credits that go with the original games. But it's it's just bare bones isn't even the word. It's more just like, hey, yeah, this thing is there's kind of nothing here in terms of like, hey, we made a lot of cool stuff. Like the bonus content that I did not spend a ton of time with the bonus content because there wasn't really much to look at. You're just like, okay, yeah, you did. Like, it just feels like the bare minimum for a franchise that deserves a level of respect, if not reverence. You know, if we can, we'll put the kidding aside here. I know I have opinions about the Metal Gear Solid games, of course, but they are important games. And they deserve better than this. They deserve some contextualization. They deserve, instead of just like a thing up front that says, these games were made a long time ago and there may be views and opinions in them that are a little out there, buddy. Like, that's just, they just kind of blanket through that at the top of all of the games. And they're just like, in case you don't like that Solid Snake is not talking to, he's looking at ladies' butts. Which, sure. I just, that stuff, it's just not, it's not put together super well. It's the sort of thing that, while I don't know that I would say we need to do full remakes of all of these games, because God knows we've already seen a remake of Metal Gear Solid, and I don't, I saw some people saying, like, I can't believe they didn't put twin snakes in this. I'm like, I can. We're good. But if they'd put twin snakes in here, maybe we could have got like a 5-hour interview with Dennis Dyack or something, you know? Like, that would have been, you know, it would have been fascinating. Like, that's the thing. Metal Gear as a franchise and the development around it and the people behind it are fascinating. The process by which trailers were created to deliberately kind of throw people off the scent of what Metal Gear Solid 2 really was fascinating. And now think about that in today's context with the way that like people react to stuff these days. Like, I think that the Metal Gear Solid 2 stuff was incredible. The trailer stuff, the way the game came, I think that is maybe my favorite Metal Gear Solid game. Because they knew how to tweak it. They knew how to like turn it on its head and make it weird in the right ways, right? Like, that's the game that lets you know what the fuck is really going on with this franchise. Because a lot of people came out of Metal Gear Solid like, Solid Snake's a badass. He's got a gun and he can break dudes' necks. And like, they came out of it like gung-ho, generic fucking action movie. Like, yeah, man, I'm going to get this key and make it cold. And then we're going to do this. And, you know, they like all the weirdness, all of the anime fucking just went right over their head. And they just went like, fuck yeah, man. You know who I like? Arnold Schwarzenegger and Solid Snake. Like, just like dumb. Metal Gear Solid 2 is the game that people went into going like, fuck yeah, Solid Snake is back. I'm going to get a rocket launcher and blow up some shit. Ow! And then they said, no, man, like, you don't even fucking play as Solid Snake for most of this game. This game is like the anti-war narrative that you saw at the very end of the first game. These guys are on a mission to stop fucking nuclear fucking war, dude. Like, this is not fucking, they're not here to fucking be like, yeah, man, we got a Jeep and we're going to shoot guns. Like, you know, like, and that's, I think, where I actually started to fall in love with Metal Gear Solid. Now, I don't like Metal Gear Solid 3. I don't think it's a fun video game. I don't like it mechanically. I don't like the way that game flows, the way it plays, whatever. Story-wise, all that stuff, it's fascinating. And I love Metal Gear Solid 4. 2 and 4. 2 and 4. That's where I'm at. And 5. And 5. But like, people love 3, people love to play 3, and I totally get it. Like, I respect that. Like, if we're being real here, like, I respect that like 3 is just like not my type of stealth game, and like the controls for the camo is the thing I always come back to, is like a really early game thing that I remember seeing and being like, I'm fucking not gonna do this. I'm gonna go into this menu and fucking change this. It's like, fuck you. It took too long. It was too much. So I think that, like, now imagine today and the way people react to trailers today. If the Metal Gear Solid 2 situation happened today, dumb fucks would be filing class action lawsuits. Well, you sold me a video. I thought it was going to have this bad motherfucker, and this guy has long hair? How dare you? Like people fucking suck. People fucking suck. And that's why we can't have nice things. That's a hard thing to balance, right? Because on the other end, I agree that, like, people should not be deceiving consumers about games they're going to buy. But I think there's something fascinating about making the marketing campaign part of the show, if you will. And I think that that's an interesting thing that they did that you couldn't do now for a variety of reasons. One, because it's been done. And two, because, yeah, you know, people would get it in their head that they need to sue Konami or something stupid like that. It'd be embarrassing. But when you take all of that, all of the things that happened with that franchise, with the trailers that came out and everything else, there's a lot to talk about with Metal Gear Solid. There's a lot to talk about with the transition from Metal Gear on the MSX and Metal Gear 2, but like the transition from those games into what Metal Gear Solid was. Like the amount of, like, things you could produce, packages, videos, interviews, the amount of things you could produce and include in this to make it a full-on documentary style look at what I guess is, we have to say, is one of gaming's most important franchises. That's not me saying it needs to go on and they may need to make new ones. That's me saying that, like, at a point in time, Metal Gear was doing things that other games would not do and could not do. I think ultimately that's also part of its downfall. But boy, that made it an interesting ride. Even, yes, the story of Snake's Revenge, the story of the fake Metal Gear 2 that came to the NES. Like there's so many things you could sink into, but none of that's there. And, you know, it's tempting to say, like, well, it's because of the relationship between Konami and Hideo Kojima being, you know, we assume it's non-existent, but, you know, I guess ultimately we don't. Maybe he's got friends over there. I don't know. Who the fuck? How do we know? Ask Jeff Keighley. But I think if he was still in the fold, if he was still someone that that they would be able to talk to, I don't think they would have produced something markedly better. Maybe you would have gotten, like, slightly better supplemental material, but you would not have gotten something with the depth required, because I don't think Konami has the stomach for it. And I don't think that they have the interest in it. I think that, especially, you know, because the franchise is basically done, or you know, might as well be. They're just like, fuck it. The licenses on this stuff expired and we can't sell it anymore. And we found a new way to, we redid the licenses, we redid this and that, or whatever the situation is. And so we're going to put them back out now and sell them all over again. And so it feels like a cash in, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's great that we have a collection of these games again. You know, it's been a couple generations, I guess, since we were able to get our hands on all this Metal Gear. And we'll see where they go from here. You know, there's people have data mined out references to MGS 4 and 5, or like a Master Collection 2 or something, implying that maybe they will finally put MGS 4 on something other than a PS3, which would be great. And then yeah, they're gonna do whatever that remake is of 3, right? The Metal Gear, the Delta thing. Yeah, Peace Walker on a computer with online support would be really cool. Like that's the thing. Like hey, great, Metal Gear Solid. Sure, man, fine. And they've got different versions of it in there. They've got a menu so you can go like, oh, I want to play Metal Gear Integral, the Japanese re-release of the US, blah, blah, blah. I want to play the European VR missions. Like they put that shit in there. But it really just feels like you're loading ISOs off a menu. It's really bland. But like Metal Gear has such a history and such a weird depth that Peace Walker, fucking Metal Gear Acid 1 and 2 should be something that people should be able to play. The portable games, your Ghost Babel, your those sorts of things should be preserved in some way. Portable ops. Yeah, let me take my PlayStation 5 around the neighborhood and plug it in so I can read other people's Wi-Fi networks and get new soldiers or whatever. There's just a lot of stuff there that, I wish that this was able to get treated better. I guess that I wish that this was a much larger production than just here's the games. It's cool that the games are here, that you can play them and like they're fine. The PC version sounds like it's fucked in terms of like they released patch notes that were just like, hey man, like IGN had the exclusive on the patch notes, I think. Just great. But it was like, yeah, we're gonna make it so you can toggle between windowed and full screen mode in all of these games because it's broken right now. There's like a lot of fucked up shit like that. But like there's stuff with the PC version that is kind of jacked. But it came out to other platforms. I played a little bit on PlayStation 5 as well. And you're like, yep. As someone who has a lot of ways to play most of the Metal Gear Solid games these days, this is not necessarily exciting. It is great from a point of view of like, now these games are accessible again in an easy way for the average consumer. And that's good. But it deserves better. It deserves better. And that's with, I have very mixed feelings on a lot of Metal Gear stuff, but I definitely think that there's so much you could do. And some of these stories have been told, right? Like we've heard bits and pieces from behind the scenes from Metal Gear's development and what it was like to cut that trailer or what it was like to do this or, who made all of the cool fake commercials in MGS4. And who, you have people who will tell you that who did all of the work on MGS4 and who didn't. And, like there are stories. Those are stories you probably won't find in an official compilation, but like, that would be fun to have someday too. The Solid Snake in the fucking skateboarding game should be in there somewhere, right? Is that, yeah. Anyway, they put it back out. It's not really what you're looking for. The games are there and you can play them and that's great. But I think when we think about a re-release, especially when they're calling it a collection and they're calling it the master, like all of this stuff, I think other developers have shown, and I'll just say Digital Eclipse again, because god damn it, man, they're an amazing crew doing this sort of work. Like imagine a world in which they got a level of access to the names behind these games and were able to go and produce this sort of content. Or, hey, like separate it from the games. Fuck's Danny O'Dwyer doing? Stop digitizing old tapes and get on a goddamn airplane. Wait a couple of years, and when these kids are older, I'll come with you. We'll go. We'll figure it out. We'll get to the bottom of this. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my whole take on it is like, gosh, this seems like you could have given it to M2, Digital Eclipse, like somebody, and done something to these games. Like, let me start at certain points. Let me see the pivotal points. Like, do the thing where you can just watch a playthrough of the game and jump in at any time. I think like those, there's just a lot of bits and pieces of like things that other gaming collections have done. That, it'd be cool if they it'd be cool if more was done with this. I don't know. I get why that didn't happen, but it's a bummer. Let's get on to the news. Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, appeared on the official Xbox podcast to talk about Xbox and Activision, which they own now, which is a part of Xbox. Just a couple of tidbits here, really. If you remember correctly, we're on I believe the last or second to last year of the marketing deals that get PlayStation players early access to like the beta that just happened for Modern Warfare 3, and that they'll have exclusive skins and so on and so forth. Phil Spencer's got out and said, like, that's kind of the end of, sort of the end of that. That's not really the way he phrased it, but, he says that they are shooting for 100% parity across all platforms. Video Games Chronicle recapped this, and they pulled some quotes out so that I didn't have to type them out myself, which is very handy. Thank you to Andy Robinson. It says here, for Call of Duty players on PlayStation and in the future Nintendo, I want you to feel 100% a part of the community. I don't want you to feel like there's content you're missing out, skins you're missing out, there's timing that you're missing out on. That's not the goal. The goal is 100% parity across all platforms as much as we can for launch and content. I say as much as we can on parity because clearly some platforms have resolution and frame rate differences just based on performance, but there's nothing else. So, that's, I don't know. That's I think some of the first details we've heard about how they're going to handle this, which is kind of what you expected, that, hey, they're probably not going to renew a marketing deal with PlayStation to get the Call of Duty beta onto PlayStation first. And that's right. Yes. What was it? It was one of the Black Ops games on PlayStation. You had 2 extra loadout slots, which is like a weird, I don't know. You either really care about that or you never care about that. It's like kind of a weird inclusion. We have no goal of somehow trying to use Call of Duty to get you to buy an Xbox console. I want the Call of Duty nation to feel supported across all platforms. There's always this temptation when you're talking about like a legion of fans for a thing to try to put a name on it, and nation is probably one of my least favorite. The Call of Duty nation doesn't, I mean, especially for a game that is so internationally beloved. The WWE universe, that's another good example of one of those. It's such a sportsy thing. It's so sportsy. That I don't know, whatever. It's just always, it's either, there's two things you get when you use the word nation. It's either sports or right-wing talk radio. That's it. Those are the only ones using it. And both of them feel like a weird fit. He goes on, we've been on the other side of some of those skin deals. And even this Modern Warfare 3 beta wasn't on Xbox the first week. I don't think that helps the community. I don't think that helps the game. So it's the focus. If you're a PlayStation player, a Nintendo player, a PC player, or an Xbox console player, I want you to feel 100% part of the Call of Duty nation. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's I think the right move for them going forward. I think, it's interesting to hear him get out and say, we're not trying to sell you consoles. We're not trying to sell consoles to Call of Duty players, because I think the thing that is kind of not being said here, and we'll see how it all nets out, right? Well, like, when do they pull the trigger on this? When, assuming, but it's Game Pass. Call of Duty for $0 additional dollars as part of a Game Pass subscription is something that does at least make the Xbox a little bit more attractive when compared to its contemporaries. So if they end up going in that direction, which I assume they're still going to do that, it would be weird for them. That's a weird message to send, right? To existing Game Pass subscribers, like, hey, yeah, thanks. You get all our games except for this one, because this one makes a lot of money. A lot of people buy this one, so we want to keep selling this one. But everything else, man, all the other Activision greats are going to be on Game Pass. But yeah, I think it's interesting to hear him say, that their goal is to not change Call of Duty in a way that skews it in favor of selling Xbox consoles, which is what they could do, because they could say, oh, well, fuck it. We're only going to, well, they couldn't without regulatory bodies being like, why did you spend all these months lying to us? But there is the aspect of like, oh, hey, what if they only sold it on Xbox consoles? What if they only, that's a thing that gets them to maybe sell some more consoles, some more Game Pass subscriptions, but they lose money on that deal. That was always the thing, right? That was always when they said, hey, we don't intend to take this off of existing platforms. It's because it's one of the best-selling console games, if not the best-selling console game every goddamn year. And so it would be dumb of them to throw all that money away by going Xbox only. And maybe they get to a point where Call of Duty, I think that if they do make a change like that, it's because Call of Duty ain't hitting like it used to. And they're like, fuck it. And no one cares anymore. They're like, yeah, it's not coming to PlayStation anymore. And people are like, all right, you're still making those? Have fun with that, I guess. Like if it falls off to that degree or something. But, there's also other ways, like if we want to be snaky about it, if we want to think about like other ways for them to honor the letter of the law, but not the spirit, then you end up in a situation where you're like, oh yeah, annual releases of Call of Duty are going to come to all platforms. Also, 2027 is the last annual release of Call of Duty. It's migrating to a subscription platform of its own. Game Pass subscribers get a discount on their Call of Duty Nation subscription, and then you get it all. There's little bits and pieces of stuff they could do there. But again, it would be very dumb to do that, to not... They should sell as long as there's a PlayStation to sell Call of Duty on, they should do it. Because they would make more money that way. And if they want to give Xbox Game Pass subscribers benefits there, discounts there, or whatever, I think that makes sense. But, it does seem like there's stuff they could do, right? Like, think about the Xbox Gold, like the perks program that no one remembers exists. But every month a thing pops up and says, here's like 8 things you can get. And it's like DLC for a game, or like it's an Apex Legends skin. And also every single month, I'm pretty sure every single month since it came out, there is a Game Pass perk for Phantasy Star Online 2 items. Every month you have to go in and redeem the perk to get it, because they don't just give it to you for nothing. You got to go in there and hit A on it to redeem the codes and get whatever else. But since they launched PSO2 on Xbox, it has had, like, you can go in there and get, reset whatever it is. Or it's like, hey man, Crunchyroll for a month and a half or whatever the fuck it is. 3 months of Discord Nitro. But you can't add it onto your existing subscription, so get fucked. So maybe you end up in a situation where it's like, hey, yes, you can acquire this skin on all platforms, On Xbox, you acquire it by pushing the A button. On PlayStation and the Switch 2, you acquire it by giving us 5,000 COD points or whatever. Like, there's situations like that too, that I would not be shocked if they explore that sooner rather than later, in terms of just like, yeah, you're gonna get this skin for nothing over here, but you can still buy it on other. We're not gonna, because the PlayStation skins in Call of Duty, if you equip them and then log into the game on an Xbox or on a PC, the skin is magically unequipped because you cannot use that skin on other platforms. They have like cross save, cross progression, whatever. Like you can play on any platform. You do have to buy the game to get the stuff. You can't just like play it for free on other platforms. But if you happen to own it on multiple platforms, as I somehow seem to every year for one reason or another, I already have the PlayStation and PC versions of Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, owned technically. It's just how it works out sometimes in this line of work. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see how that ends up playing out. But yeah, I think that's fine. Keep in mind that by virtue of me doing this for a living, this is not me saying I paid for multiple versions of Call of Duty across multiple platforms. Last year, I ended up with Call of Duty on all 3 of its platforms, and I paid for one because I think I needed beta access, and I wasn't getting an email back from anyway, whatever it was. Elsewhere in the same podcast, Phil Spencer spoke about the Activision catalog and mentioned a few names of existing Activision properties. Here's the quote here again from Video Games Chronicle. The amount of franchises that we now have in our portfolio is kind of inspiring. It's daunting. I feel that we have to be a great custodian for the content that we touch. These are memories from people on different platforms, different decades. And I want to make sure that when we're going back and visiting something, that we do it with our complete ability, a motivated team that wants to go work on something and make a difference, not just create something for a financial gain or create something for a PR announcement and not deliver on the product. So I'm going to start with the teams and what they're passionate about, and that's why I'm excited to go on these studio visits, and then we'll look at it. So yeah, I think, that's what you want to hear. And of course, that's what they're going to say. They're not going to say like, yeah, man, we're going to keep turning the Call of Duty crank until the fucking wheels fall off. What? Warcraft Rumble? You're making a Warcraft mobile game? Okay, I guess we care about the mobile game. The other stuff, fucking whatever. So of course that's what you're going to say, and we'll see how it goes. Like, I think that this to me is one of the more intriguing aspects. This is the actual intriguing part about the acquisition, is what does it mean for the rest of this shit that Activision owned? Not just Call of Duty. You can within some minor parameters shifting, you can predict what will happen with Call of Duty for the next 5 years. They will keep making it. It'll go on Game Pass here, or you'll get some skins here, or whatever else, but like, whatever. The interesting thing is, what the hell happens to Guitar Hero? Is someone going to try to take Guitar Hero seriously again? Which seems like a nightmare, but also, man, yeah, they should do that if they think they can do it. I don't know. He goes on here. There's like some interesting, like if you remember, as part of the court case, there was a lot of Xbox talking shit about Xbox. There was a lot of like very like, hey, yeah, like PlayStation is beating the shit out of us. Like, you talk about us like we're this dominant player in the space, but honestly, we're a trash. This is a garbage dump over here, man. No one wants these boxes. I don't know what, like they were really hat in hand in court, and we get a little bit more of it here in this podcast, is I think we've done an okay job as Xbox. I don't think we've done an A+ job on looking at our franchises and revisiting them. It's always a trade-off between what do you do that's new and going back and doing something. I do think with Game Pass, we have the ability to maybe pick a couple of franchises every year and almost do a revisited. I just made up that term, so it's not a brand, it's not on a box. Phil Spencer invented the word revisit. No, I don't know. So yeah, I agree that I don't think they've done an A+ job of looking at their existing franchises and revisiting them. I would argue that I think a lot of what we viewed as their dominant franchises over the last decade have also fallen into various states of disrepair. Though, I will say it sounds like the new season of Halo Infinite is actually quite good. There's some so I guess in the Forge mode, they now have AI scripting in that thing, so you can build some really wild shit. And that sounds fascinating. But anyway, it sounds like the current season of Halo is doing well and is doing well numbers wise as well for them in a way that maybe it hasn't in the past. Almost in a Battlefield like way. So yeah, but yes, the trade-off between what do you do that's new and going back and doing something is what he says here. And I guess my thing is I don't think they've been doing great by their classic franchises. Your Azurix, your Cameos, your Bloodwakes. I don't think they've been doing great by their kind of bread and butter franchises, your Gears of Wars. Not that any of these games have particularly been bad. Your Halos, Forza, I think has become uneven. Forza's become uneven in a way that it used to not be, I guess, is the thing, right? Through the Xbox One, and now here again on Xbox Series X with Forza Motorsport, I think that there's things that they have done that has harmed the appeal of those games. And I don't necessarily think that they've been doing fantastic on new IP either. So when he says it's a trade-off between what do you do that's new and going back and doing something, like the trade-off between let's come up with some new shit versus let's make the next Gears of War, it doesn't feel like they're doing either especially well. Hi-Fi Rush is cool, and you do have to put that under their banner. Redfall is not cool, and you do have to put that under their banner. But it's been a long time since Gears. I think that the last Gears was, it's about 4 years ago now, right? 4 years and change. I remember playing the last Gears of War when we had our first child, and my daughter, maybe that's why she's having so many problems now, is she was born when I was playing Control and Gears at weird hours of the night because she was awake and she was pointed at the screen and yeah, I did it. You always trace back to dumb shit the parents did. Anyway, I liked that last Gears of War. They tried some things in terms of trying to make it sort of open world and not really, but the open worldy type stuff in there was kind of the weak link in that game, stringing together more traditional Gears of War levels. It was a neat idea, but I do think they need to finish the fight on that and give us one more of those. But then if they closed out this, if they closed out this storyline, and I'm sitting here as I'm talking about the storyline in the second Gears of War trilogy, I guess I'm also thinking in the back of my head, who the hell cares? I am interested in whatever that lady's name is who's related to the Borg Queen, the Locust Queen, whatever the fuck. She's got the pendant. What's up with her? That's it. What's up with her? Gears of War 6. Maybe you don't need to revisit that. Now that I'm like saying that out loud, I'm like, if they stopped making Gears of War games now, that would be weird. But also, I don't necessarily feel like this story absolutely must be finished. They should finish what they start. When they start trilogies, when they start stories, they should finish them. That I feel strongly about. But, yeah, I don't know. They should make another Gears, but also I am of the mind that a lot of that game could use, well, I don't know. People like the online. I am the guy over here that will constantly beat the drum and tell you this game should have multiplayer, but it should not be the multiplayer it had. It should not be the competitive multiplayer it has now. Because I think that is a very narrow focus. I think that the people who got good at that a lot of years ago are still really good at it now because it is all that same shit that I find to be fucking dull as hell. But Horde mode, like what Gears of War did for co-op and wave-based survival modes, and would you have had, and I should look at a calendar here before I say this sentence, would you have had the Call of Duty Zombies mode if not for Gears of War Horde mode? If I'm wrong on the calendar on that, then just flip that sentence around and it will be true. if zombies came first. I can't remember. But I feel like Gears feels like the thing with the zombies mode kind of closely behind it, and then maybe Halo's Firefight. There. Like those are the games that made the wave-based survival thing happen there for a while. Anyway. Okay, zombie. Okay, thank you to Ready Set Victory for looking at a calendar. Yes. Gears 2 was in 2008/9 and Zombies was 08/09. And Call of Duty World at War November 08. Yeah, so World at War was 08, and that had the end credit sequence thing. Anyway. We could trace that back some other day. The popularity of those modes, I think, came from, the Gears Horde mode, and then also the rise of the zombies mode into a full thing, and not just a little post credit Easter egg thing. So I don't know. I think that Microsoft. I think the Xbox brand is they're not firing on all cylinders, and in fact, I'd say sometimes it seems like they're firing on very few cylinders these days. But it does feel like the potential is there for them to get it going. I'm going to reinstall Halo Infinite. I'm excited to kind of see what they've done to it. It's been a season or two since I checked in on it, and again, it sounds like that this current season is being very well received, and I did have a really good time with that game when it first came out. But yeah, I guess okay, well, let's go on here. He's talking about some other stuff with some of the Activision properties. But I tease about things like Hexen just because I remember playing it as a kid. I have no plan as a kid. Did Phil Spencer play Hexen as a kid? Hexen came out 1995. Same year as the PlayStation. Phil Spencer is not younger than I am. No, he is in fact, he was born in 68, so he is 5. So he is 7 years older than I am. I was not a kid when Hexen came out. Phil Spencer, you were not a kid when Hexen came out. I love you. We can all be kids forever. But 1995 is the year the damn PlayStation came out. I was 20 in 1995. You were in your late 20s by then. Mid to late, let's say. Come on, son! All right. Anyway. I tease about things like Hexen just because I remember playing as a kid. I have no plan for that, but I do think that when you look across all of the franchises that are part of our teams, there's an opportunity for us to go back, even if it's just to recognize the moment and what those things meant in gaming's history and do something right with it. Make it available to people through Game Pass. I think there's an opportunity. There's not a plan for that, but there's an opportunity. And he says he would support studios revisiting older games because I think it's just, then the quote is, because I just think there's just an amazing trove of things that we can go and touch again, but it's not necessarily a mandate. So it's, if it's not a mandate that sounds like, hey, we're not going to sit here and force you to go make a new Barnstorming. We're not going to go make Hacker 3. Oh my God, could you imagine? Zenji 2. But if there are passionate teams that are interested in pitching on those old games, it sounds like that they are more than willing to listen. So that, yeah, and then again, of course, right? I mean, these are the right answers to these questions. You would not spend this amount of money and this amount of time trying to acquire all of this stuff if this was not the plan. If you wouldn't come in and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna force them to churn out a bunch of really boring Singularity sequels just to break some more hearts. Hey, we're bringing back Singularity, but it's bad now. Like, oh man. When asked about anything that he's personally excited about, he says, specific on Activision and Blizzard, there's some moments in Activision's history. He's talking to the host here. You mentioned Tony Hawk. You mentioned Guitar Hero. Even things like Skylanders that were moments where the teams kind of innovated outside of expectation. What do you mean I'm going to carry a plastic guitar and plug it into my console and play? Like, that's never going to work until it worked. And then everybody said, well, of course that was going to work. Skylanders kind of the same way. I love that Skylanders is getting mentioned in this. I think under no circumstances would you bring back Skylanders in their existing form. What would you do with the concept? The Toys to Life concept is good. It's in some ways anti-consumer. And it's a good thing that they died when they did, because if Skylanders had kept going and Skylanders had kept gaining popularity, and if Disney Infinity had stuck around, if Lego Dimensions or Starlink or whatever else, if all of that stuff had stuck around and made it this far, they would have all failed as NFTs by now. They would have done, oh, we're doing digital ownership of, you own a digital Drobot. And you're like, dog, that's just called DLC. You're like, no, but this Drobot is yours. You're like, oh, so it's worse than if I had just bought Drobot DLC? Because what? We put Drobot on the blockchain. And he's smoking out everyone. Drobot has smoked out the entire blockchain. All this Ethereum is fucking high as fuck. Fucking Drobot. We love Drobot. We love Drobot here at the program. Here's part of the Gerstmann Nation. We love us some Drobot. We wish him well. Some of the franchises... Okay, so this is a little more in line. Spencer said some of the franchises he's most deeply connected to are the ones he played in his youth, like Infocom's text adventure Zork and Sierra's adventure game King's Quest. Yes. These are the age-appropriate references for this. As someone who also loves Zork... But I don't actually have a lot of love for King's Quest. I was more of a Space Quest guy. But the final quote here that the Video Games Chronicle has pulled here is, most important is that we treat them with the respect they deserve and that we don't turn it into some way for us to just do, like I said, a PR moment or something else. So yeah, not bringing it back as stunts, but bringing it back because you got good reasons to make a new one. Again, Of course, right? Of course, this is what you would say in these types of interview type settings. Is you would say, yes, we want to be respectful of this stuff, and I believe them. I believe that that's how they will go. I hope that they do something. Like, personally, on a personal level, I would be very excited to see some of these things return. And I would love to see them take some chances. I would love to see them take some chances on some IP that you would go like, oh, weird. Like, I would love to see them do some weird stuff. I would love to see them do some smaller games. Someone asked me, I think it came into my Tumblr or something, but someone was like, it wouldn't, if you basically said, if you were going to make a new Pitfall, wouldn't that just be Uncharted? And the answer is like, yeah, kind of. It would basically, like, if you were to try to make a big budget, full on new Pitfall game, and you really look at the vibes of Pitfall, you really look at the situations that Pitfall Harry ends up in and all of that stuff, it's that vine swinging, treasure grabbing, scorpion dodging. Like, you just look at it and go like, yeah, sure. If you look at his adventures, then you go like, yeah, I guess it's really just Uncharted, except maybe he has a whip instead of guns or something. Like, it really is this just kind of like generic Indiana Jones derivative, or not derivative, but it is in the same lane as all of that sort of stuff. And I think if you look at the latter day, the like PlayStation era Pitfall games, you start to see them move in a direction that, like, if they had kept making Pitfall games, they would have hit upon Uncharted, but way worse is, I think, what Activision would have done with Pitfall if they had kept making them into the PlayStation 3 era. If they had decided to make a big Pitfall game around the PlayStation 3, they would have made, like, assuming Uncharted didn't exist. If it did, then they would have just made some Uncharted knockoff, and you'd be like, all right, well, shit, man, what? But, like, what is a modern Pitfall game, and how do you honor that? Is it an endless runner? Maybe. But they did that too, and that was not very fun. And so I think you do kind of make these smaller games. Like, could you make, this is going to be weird, but like, what if you took the Hi-Fi Rush engine and made a Pitfall game in it? Obviously you lose a lot of the rhythm stuff, but you keep a lot of the, you modify it to fit the IP and the setting and whatever else. But what if you had that type of third person, like, vine swinging, like, it's a grappling hook at that point. Instead of like a vine swinging back and forth, and you run up to it and go, why is this vine swinging forever? And you're like, oh, because people really liked the game Jungle Hunt in arcades. I'm like, okay. And instead you've got a whip and you're using that to swing over pits and quicksand and whatever else. Like, you could make a third person action game in that style, in that Pitfall style. You could, and again, like, what if Tango, it's weird. What if Tango made a Pitfall game? I think that could be cool. I think they should instead probably make a Hi-Fi Rush sequel. But, using the bones of Hi-Fi Rush, using that engine, using what they made for that type of third-person game, maybe you would need to figure out combat, because we don't need more games like that. We don't need more games, like, the rhythm element of Hi-Fi Rush is what makes that. If you strip that out, then you just have, like, another, like, hey, you walked into a room and now there's 8 guys to punch. Keep hitting that button. Occasionally you get to build up a combo high enough to do a finisher or something, because we played those Batman games too. And I think that stuff is done. That stuff has been done to a degree that maybe I am actually pitching you a Metacritic fucking 62 game right now. I'm just like, no, hear me out, because it's just, that shit's just been done. But if you do it and announce it as a surprise, and you do it on Game Pass so that the stakes are a little bit lower, and it's a smaller game by design, Maybe even a little smaller than Hi-Fi Rush was. Like, I think that you could have a thing that doesn't overstay its welcome, and you go like, oh, actually, this is really cool. This is like a fun little thing, and I played it for a while, and, yeah, aspects of it super derivative of modern, the way melee combat gets handled in modern games. I mean, Spider-Man is that too, What if you just took the Spider-Man combat system and gave it to Pitfall Harry, but he had a whip instead of webs? And you wrap the whip around guys and pull them over, or pull them into the air and pull them down. I don't know. To me, the low-hanging fruit is, and without looking at the books, right? Without cracking the books and going, what is actually the thing that makes money and makes sense from a business standpoint? From me, purely as just like hey, what are things that have some name recognition that it would make sense to do more of? I think Tony Hawk is near the top of that list. I think Guitar Hero is near the top of that list, but obviously much more difficult to do because you're really asking the question, do you want to get back into the plastic instrument business after it collapsed so dramatically? Maybe retail's ready for it. Maybe retail is so desperate as digital sales rise, they're like, you're going to make something that we can actually sell in our store and you can't buy it online? I mean, you can buy it online, but you can buy it from us online. Great, we'll take it. We'll fill the fucking shelves with it. Yeah, we'll put them right next to the Funko Pops, man. Maybe they would love to have guitars in there now. I don't know. However, a new Guitar Hero game, the kind of the other bits and pieces here, that I think make a new rhythm game difficult is who's buying that, and is it old dudes who are like, oh fuck yeah, man, you've got some Floyd in here. Are you gonna fucking like, how much new guitar based music is being made? Are the kids going to be excited about a new Guitar Hero? They're going to listen to Lee Van Cleef, Greta Van Fleet. Is that shitty band? That dog shit fucking, oh my God. Fucking terrible. Like, who's making guitar rock out there? Is there enough of it to drive a brand new Guitar Hero game that maybe appeals to an existing youth demographic? Or are you just making games for 40-year-old dudes, 40 to 60-year-old dudes? And you're just like, yeah, man, we put some Rush in this one too. And you're like, hell yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure there are some. I'm just not. Well, I'm not aware of it. I don't travel in that space, right? So I'm not trying to talk shit about guitar-based music. It's more just like, is it being made at a level of popularity and at a quantity that a new Guitar Hero game makes sense to that demographic? Yes, or do we need to make Trap Hero? And Trap, yes, everyone's favorite modern. Yeah, we're doing Drill Hero. They just do all the late to the party genres and just be like, 10 to 20 years late on everything. We're doing Vaporwave Hero. Finally, you stare at this bust, you stare at this statue. There's a black and white checkerboard on the ground, and there's two knobs. One slows the song down, and one is a filter that just makes it all sound vaguely fuzzy. And you turn them both, and then it's $60. Nightcore Hero, same controller, you just turn the knobs in the other direction. What if we just sold a big knob for consoles that was just a bass boost knob, and you just turn that up and bass boost every game you're playing into oblivion, and then that would be good? Can we just do that? Is that the new rhythm game? Just the new rhythm game is we're playing Atari 2600 games on an Xbox and then turning this knob to make the bass go up to about 800%. And so you're just playing adventure and like, this we're getting to the castle and look at that dragon, kind of looks like a duck, and it's just like, yeah. Right? Yes, I'm pitching you a bad version of Sound Voltex. Yeah. Put Sound Voltex out on consoles. Why don't we just do that? Tunithm, whatever the fuck it is. Anyway, I will be intrigued. I will be paying close attention to see what they end up doing. I think that, the low-hanging fruit seems to be, in terms of just like, broad mainstream awareness, which is not always the goal, right? You can make your small pet projects if the budget is right. But, it's probably Tony Hawk. It's probably Guitar Hero. It's probably, like, fuck, dude. Do you make a new Warcraft? You make a new StarCraft, actually. Is StarCraft 3, is StarCraft Ghost, we mean it this time, the game they should make? Should they make a third-person action game in the StarCraft universe? Like, you could. There's no reason, well, no, and by that I mean there probably are some reasons, but they're like, there's no reason not to. You could make a new StarCraft. You could make a StarCraft action game. You could take the Overwatch engine and just say, all right, we're going to apply this to all of the things we canceled when we were making all of that story mode stuff. We've now filtered into a StarCraft game. Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, Warcraft 4. I mean, do you make a Warcraft 4? Do you make a StarCraft 3? I think that, they are, Microsoft probably already knows this because they've done the Age of Empires stuff recently, but also they, now they have a lot of access to Blizzard's StarCraft 2 data, and they can start to figure out like, oh, well, what the hell, is there actually room for a competitive RTS in this landscape? Should we do something like that? Is there value there? Is there enough value for us to pursue it? And so on and so forth. I don't really know. I don't really know what the answer to that question is. I think that you could do stuff with StarCraft. Jimmy Raynor visual novel. You've got to pick the right options. You need to meet and fuck Kerrigan. That's my entire pitch. Give me I'll be waiting for the funds, the development money that I need to make this game. It will hit my bank account, I'm sure, any moment now, and we'll get going. Ugh. You thought the creep was gross before. Yeah, so we'll see what they do. I don't know. Like, there's a ton of weird deep pulls they could do if they wanted to. I think a lot of the obvious stuff is to try to reintroduce some of these classic games via Game Pass. I would love to, and again, I think it would be really funny. I don't know how they package it up. Do they package it up on some form of game room? Do they build some kind of front end for emulating 2600 games and other computer games to get some of those old Activision games on there? Or do they just release them piecemeal? It's just like literally like, here's a Pitfall icon on your dashboard. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. But like, you should get that stuff out there again. Kaboom, and not that the Xbox is a great controller for playing Kaboom, but River Raid. Your Pitfalls, your River Raids, whatever else. Your Tony Hawks. That would be the game I would love to see them do. is, hey, we made, here's your Tony Hawk 3+4 thing, but actually also, and they would probably fuck it up, right? Because, you know, when you take mods, when you take community projects and make them official, something always is lost in the translation. But I would love to see them just take Thug Pro as inspiration for what they do with Tony Hawk. Of just like, yeah, we're going to keep putting levels into this. And you can buy the levels, but what if you just had Game Pass? And you have access to the full breadth of the... Well, I guess they don't give DLC away for free on Game Pass, right? Yes, Tony Hawk as a service. And every year they just introduce a new soundtrack instead of like, here's 8 new levels, it's here's 30 new songs. That would be cool. Yeah, okay, yeah. In Killer Instinct, you get every character on Game Pass. That's right. Yeah, I guess they kind of, there is something like that. I don't know. This is whatever. Long story short, there's a lot they could do. I hope they do it right. I hope they do it right, and that's something I'm fascinated by that acquisition simply because it's such a weird. They now own and control, like think about it, because of the Bethesda acquisition and now the Activision stuff. Think about the franchises that Xbox now controls. They own Doom. They own Pitfall. They own Halo. They own Call of Duty. They control the Tony Hawk franchise, Wolfenstein. Like, all of the classic id stuff is now at Microsoft. World of Warcraft is theirs. Like, all of these kind of classic franchises from, you know, a lot of PC history there through the Bethesda stuff, and through the Blizzard stuff, of course, but like also crazy early console stuff as well. They own some piece of Ghostbusters for the NES. You know? They control Diablo, StarCraft, Warcraft, Dishonored. You know, like but like, you know, some of the games that you would think of as like, this was at the time, this was one of the biggest games going, you know, like Quake or Doom, and now Call of Duty and Halo, which, you know, it was not maybe what Halo used to be. Gears of War, like they control the shooter space in a really weird way. Like past, present, at least. Future, I don't know. You know, who controls the future of shooters? Is it Epic? Is it Fortnite? Is it, you know, does EA strike back? It sounds like EA's on kind of an upward swing here with Battlefield. I know they a lot of people have been talking up the player numbers for the most recent Battlefield release because they did, I guess, a free weekend and then a deep discount on the game, and it sounds like that worked out well for them to the point where, like, Battlefield numbers are better than they've been since launch, probably, which is kind of crazy. Titanfall 3. Yeah, Microsoft does not own Titanfall 3. No one owns Titanfall 3. I was reading the latest Titanfall 3 conspiracy theories on the internet because I was awake at 1 a.m. And I guess there were some pointers to the 7th anniversary of Titanfall is coming up soon. Or I'm sorry, of Titanfall 2. No, that's not right at all. Oh, maybe it is Titanfall 1. Nope. Titanfall was March 11th. Titanfall 2 was August. Well, then what the fuck? Like, I was reading this whole thing that was just like, all right, man, the 7th birthday, or it was the 7th birthday of Apex, right? Is that what it was? Anyway, people were trying to piece together like all of the little bits and pieces of hex code and hex messages and everything in some of the Apex updates and also some of the more recent Titanfall 2 updates when they went to go fix it. But okay, actually Eurogamer has written a more recent story about this stuff. The evidence of a planned surprise for players has grown bigger, and fans now believe the studio will have some news for the Titanfall series on October 28th to mark 7 years since the release of Titanfall 2. Again, okay, just the Google results were giving awesome. Google gets better every day. You know, Google does that thing where it encapsulates a Wikipedia page. It encapsulated it with the wrong date. So the wiki page says October 28th, 2016. But it says August on the little like about this game thing. Anyway, Google is so fucked up, man. I switched to DuckDuckGo on my phone, and that is I don't think that's a very good search engine either. I appreciate their ethos, but it's not giving me great results a lot of times either. In fact, it's way worse. Like, for as bad as Google has gotten, DuckDuckGo seems fucked. Going back to fucking, I'm gonna go ask Jeeves about it, man. So yeah, there's been a lot of things referencing the number 7 in little things. An encrypted message came along with a new one of their limited time game modes in Titanfall 2. There was a reference to anniversary prep in the code of some of the more recent updates and other stuff that like they're really other stuff that really seems like reaching at straws. But either way, October 28th is Saturday. So we'll see, but also that the new Apex Legends player character is coming to the game on the 31st, and she has a backstory that involves Titans as well. So this could all just be something upcoming for Apex. This could all, you know, like there's a lot of different things this could be that have nothing to do with them making a new Titanfall game. I want to believe. A couple other little bits of Microsoft news. Satya Nadella's pay, his salary is largely performance based. He's the CEO of Microsoft, and so a lot of his pay structure is built around Microsoft doing well in a wide variety of ways. He had part of his pay attached to overall growth in Xbox. And there was an SEC filing that Axios found. And it sounds like that is now not being met. And also he no longer has targets related to the Xbox brand in his comp package. Whereas originally the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. His goal was to grow the Xbox content and services revenue by 4.4%. They only grew 0.7% in that time. So he did not hit that target and did not get that money. But that was a very small part of his overall comp package. So don't worry about Mr. Nadella. He's doing okay. Yeah, and gamesindustry.biz is breaking it down. Microsoft was shooting for 73% growth in Game Pass subscribers. They only hit 28%. So, that growth has not been aggressive as they thought it would be. And we'll see how it all goes. I mean, but I guess the interesting thing here is that if his pay targets no longer include anything related to gaming, the amount, like he is no longer, he does not have skin in the game per se, as it relates to making sure that the gaming brand is growing, and doing well and blah blah blah, which can cut both ways. It means he doesn't have to go in and goose the numbers to try to hit his personal target, and make bad short-term business decisions for his own benefit, or blah blah blah. There's a lot of weird ins and outs of that sort of thing, but and Microsoft is also set to spend some time talking about third-party games. They're gonna have a stream tomorrow morning, and they have joined the club insofar as they have put something out here saying, "Hey, here's the information we're not going to have at this event. Please note, Xbox Partner Preview will not feature any additional news, game reveals, or Game Pass information related to the recent acquisition of Activision Blizzard King." They are saying, however, they will have Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, a launch trailer for Alan Wake 2, gameplay of Ark Survival Ascended, a dive into the social world of Dungeons of Hinterberg, and more. So yeah, like Nintendo does some of their third-party partner showcase type things, Microsoft is doing one of those. They will show some stuff. Ark, that's the remake of Ark Survival Ascended, right? That is the remake of Ark 1 in Unreal Engine 5 that they are doing. That is not actually Ark 2. So yeah. And I wonder if that's going to be our last kind of like live stream showcase thing for the year. We're getting kind of, well, I mean, the Game Awards will happen, but, in terms of like individual separate hardware manufacturer event type thing, this seems like it might be it. Unless Nintendo pops out something. Sometimes Nintendo just shows up and be like, I don't know, here's 9 more small farming simulators from indie developers. Enjoy that. AMD put out a video card driver, promising something called Anti-Lag Plus. And it, I guess, hooks DLLs in a way that players of Counter-Strike 2 were getting VAC banned, which is pretty fucking heavy. This has been like people from Valve saying like, hey, if you're using the latest AMD drivers, fucking don't, because you will get banned from our games because of the way that it does stuff. Now Valve has added a startup check for incompatible AMD graphics drivers, and they are reversing bans for affected players. So they're fixing it, but yeah, this is an annoying thing that AMD did. I have not heard if these drivers actually are good when working as intended, but Jesus Christ, come on, people. What are we doing? But yes, Valve is going to reverse those bans, and I guess, yeah, they have a pop-up in game now that if you're running those drivers, they'll be like, nah, son, you don't get to do this. So hopefully that'll all finish getting sorted out sooner rather than later. Looks like, hey, the layoff train is long. We have not reached the end of it, but it does continue on with some layoffs at PlayStation. There are also some layoffs at Roblox China, I believe. Saw that story going around this morning, but layoffs at a couple of different studios here that we know about so far when it comes to PlayStation. I want to say this is the second time they've laid off this year. Media Molecule, maker of Dreams and Little Big Planet, is going to lay off around 20 people going down to a team size of about 115. They released a statement, according to gamesindustry.biz. Media Molecule has made significant strategic changes during the past year, including shifting our focus from Dream to our new project. That's probably Dreams. Anyway, did they misspell the name of Dreams on social media is my question here. No, they did not. Okay. We have had to make the difficult decision to begin the consultation process for team members within certain departments of the studio. It's a tough moment for the individuals impacted and the studio overall. Every single role that has been put at risk is delivered by someone who's contributed something special to Media Molecule. We will make sure those impacted receive the best support we can provide during this process. We will continue to support the Dreams community for the foreseeable future, and we'll update on future plans at a later date. I don't know that there is a world where Dreams was a big enough project or a big enough success to stave this off, but you got to look at the path of Dreams, the path of Dreams to market, with its weird kind of stilted early access to funny, like weird, now the story is in it and everything else. Like, that was a weird project. And just a bizarre road for that one, for them basically ending support for Dreams or ending ongoing like patch updates and all the other stuff as they kind of move away from Dreams and move in favor of their new project. What's the chance of Dreams on PC is asked. I'm going to say at this point 0. I'm going to say if they were going to do it, they would have done it by now. And if they're scaling down and they're working on a new project, like, they're not focused on Dreams. They're not going to deliver Dreams on PC at this point. That ship has sailed. There's just kind of no need for that. It would be cool, hey, there's a lot of things with Dreams that you look at and go, oh, that would be cool. If they did that, maybe that would have mattered. If they did that, then maybe that would have mattered, And I think the book seems pretty closed on Dreams. Also, some folks at the PlayStation support studio called Visual Arts have been cut, including a senior level designer, someone who's in recruiting. Visual Arts kind of touched a lot of different games. They did lead development on the Last of Us remake. At least at the start of the project, and then it, I guess, got passed off to Naughty Dog at some point. And I guess, according to GameDeveloper.com, the last time we heard from Visual Arts, it was because they were teaming with Naughty Dog on an unannounced high visibility project. I wonder if that was the Last of Us multiplayer stuff that sounded like it has been troubled to the point of maybe we will never see it, or I don't really know. But we don't know what that was. Naughty Dog ended up kind of cutting some contract folks, or I guess maybe not renewing some contracts. There was technically kind of layoffs. Earlier this month, they announced that. So, it just seems like a lot of layoffs going around, and PlayStation is certainly not exempt from that. And that's probably not the last we've heard of. We're getting into that holiday window to where, obviously there's no good time to lay people off, but the holidays always seem like the worst. And I wonder if we are going to get a bit of a reprieve from it, or if we're going to see people making cuts through the holidays. Yuck. Best of luck to everyone who's now out there looking for work. It's fucked up out there from the sounds of things. Let's get into some emails. Your emails can come to me at podcast@guard.bike. That's where you send them. I'll take a look at them. And then, I don't know, something else will happen. Devin from Houston, Texas writes in to tell me why Forza can't and won't teach you how to pass other cars. This was something I was talking about last week. Just that idea of like the motorsports. How do they work? I know how to drive a car fast. I know how to like take turns properly. But how do I actually cleanly pass other cars on the track, especially in scenarios where all the cars are identical? How's that supposed to work? I mean, obviously some players make mistakes. Some drivers are not as good as others when it comes to making the line just so. But if everyone's just driving on the line, how do they pass? That was kind of my question. As silly as it sounds, because I've been driving a car for decades. But it's just a weird, yeah, anyway. So Devin writes in to try to school me on this a little bit. We'll see. An issue that casual sim racers like GT and Forza have with teaching you about passing is due to the race structure with short lap counts and limitations with current AI race behavior, which limit how in real life passing strategies cannot be applied. Keeping it short and overly simple. In real life, passing at the pro level regularly involves setting up a single pass over a period of several laps. A driver will see a pattern in the lead vehicle's line and attack so as to force the lead car to defend in a certain way to block. After setting up the lead driver's expectations on the trailing driver's line on a subsequent lap or even several laps later, the trailing driver can then switch their own line to surprise the lead driver and manage to take the inside line heading into a turn. Just one example. Due to Forza and Gran Turismo's race length usually being 3 to 4 laps, this level of mind games and strategy is not practical. It does, however, play out in iRacing and sims which actually simulate real race lengths. Passing in Forza or Gran Turismo is therefore generally limited to the more simplistic, you had a better line in a turn, so your exit speed is faster, so you overtake on the stretch. The devs likely can't teach real-world passing techniques, only for it to expose the rooted casual nature of these titles. Devin, I appreciate that you have structured your email in a way that furthers the weird, like, talking shit about console racing sims as if they are not real simulators. I love the way you have worded this in a way that you have managed to talk shit about these two games along the way. Congratulations. I hope you're enjoying iRacing. He's not wrong, but at the end of the day, okay, that's good. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me that it's sort of a mind game that plays out across multiple laps. I think that makes a lot of sense. The other thing I would say is a real problem with Gran Turismo and Forza, and you know, Gran Turismo maybe with its VR support can start to address this in a way that is not as insane. But at the end of the day, your view of what's going on to your sides and rear is really limited in Gran Turismo and Forza. Depending on which cockpit view, which camera view you're using, you're going to end up in a situation where, so when I drive, I tend to drive fully first person or potentially in the bumper cam, and I have the rear view mirror. So I can see the rear view mirror, and sometimes you can see people kind of disappear off to the side like they're going to pass this way, and you can start to infer that maybe they're catching up and maybe they're going to pass you. You don't really know once they leave your sight, but you don't really have a great way to just turn your fucking head and look out the window and go, there's a car there. You know what I mean? There's not a really good way to have full situational awareness of what the fuck is happening around you. And so that's the problem, is a car that is completely in your huge blind spot because of the nature of playing a driving game on a television screen. that you don't get to see that stuff. You don't get to know, like, oh, there's a car here, until it's too late. Until you're like, I'm just drifting over to the left ever so slightly to make my racing line. Oh, bump, 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 bump. Oh, I guess there was a car still there. Shit. And so, you know, in VR, in a full cockpit, you can use the side mirrors, and you can turn your goddamn head and go, oh shit, there's a car there. You also have to want to buy into that, which is, I think, something of a limiting factor for players, because it's the same reason why some people can't play poker unless it's for real money. Because if you're playing poker with fake money in a video game, just go in all in every time. Who fucking cares? None of it's real. The stakes aren't real. In real life, if you crash into another car, you might fuck up and die. You know, they put a lot of safety protocols in there, but you might fuck up and lose the race because your car doesn't work anymore. There's damage. And so damage gets simulated and whatever else. In these driving games, but not to the same degree, in a way where it's just like, oh gosh, I can't crash because what if I break my neck? That's a really good reason to not get into wrecks in real life. That does not and cannot apply to video games. If I crash so much that my car doesn't run anymore, I go, shit. I guess I did bad at that one. Let's do another one. And, you know, in Forza Motorsport, there is a penalty there because another one might be 20 minutes away, because when you join a session, you might be like, oh, okay, we're going to do practice for 16 more minutes and then the race will start. And you're like, what the fuck? I don't have that kind of time on my hands. I'm trying to lead a life over here. It's not track day. I've got an hour before this TV show I want to watch is going to start. So let's knock out a couple of races. Oh, wait, I can't knock out a couple of races. Maybe I can do one. I played a Forza Motorsport race the other day. And it was literally like you push a button to join it, and then you can practice, and then you qualify. At any point, you can go to qualify. And so I did that. I did like one practice lap. I'm like, cool, all right, let's qualify. Then I qualified, and then it was like, all right, man. Sit here for 16 minutes and stare at this menu. And then the race will begin. You're like, oh, yeah, fuck this. That's not the... So that's why, like, when Devin here calls it a casual sim racer and talks down on it, I'm actually on the other side of it, where I'm like, this is too serious. I just want to play the goddamn game. I don't want to practice for 16 minutes and then go into qualifying and then do a race. Are you kidding me? What if I did 3 races in that time frame? What if instead I ran 5 races in that time frame? And actually, like, did the real thing instead of just like, all right, I'm gonna sit here. I ended up just, I like tabbed out of the window and I was like, well, I'm over here on Discord, hanging out. And then occasionally a voice comes on and goes like, it's 1 minute to race time. I'm like, oh, I guess I should go look at that thing. And then I did the race and I finished fucking 9th. I was like, this sucks. And it was like, hey man, do you want to join another race? Like, because there was another one ready for me to jump into, but it was still going to be another 15 minutes before the actual race. I'm like, this, I don't want to do this. So that's too serious. When you talk about it as a casual sim, I think it's got fucked up things at both ends. It's not hardcore enough for weirdos like Devin, psychopaths like Devin, in your sled. Do you have a fucking front half of a Miata in your garage with screens bolted to it, you sick fuck? And then the other end, you got me. I just want to play a goddamn video game. And Forza Motorsport is like, oh yeah, you can do that later. Thank you, Devin, for writing it. Ryan writes in from Carroll Stream, Illinois, with a question sort of like what we were talking about with some of the Guitar Hero stuff. He says, I never owned an Xbox 360 and decided to buy one on a whim while in a local used game store, as well as an original Kinect, plus one for my aging Xbox One. There's never been a better time to buy 2 Kinects, Ryan. You've really... Mwah. Fantastic. This This is me going down a rabbit hole where I'm trying to collect playable copies of games that use weird and sometimes expensive peripherals. Just recently, for example, I assembled a pretty extensive Rock Band and Guitar Hero instrument collection after neglecting to do so back when they were cheap, setting me back well over $1,000. Ryan, this is foolish. Ryan, it's your life to lead. And whatever, well, hey, if I didn't have that stuff, I would probably want that stuff too. But I have the opposite problem of having too much of that stuff. I also got a Wii balance board and still have my aging DK bongos, PS3 Move camera and controllers, the short-lived Razer Hydra PC gaming motion controller, including the exclusive Portal 2 motion controls DLC they made for it, etc., etc. I thought about buying a Razer Hydra at one point, but thought better of it. Now that physical games are all but dying and the retail shelf presence appears to be dwindling, fewer and fewer games are on shelves that require or encourage these kinds of peripherals. You can't even play Just Dance 2023 using the Kinect anymore and are forced to use a Joy-Con or your cell phone. Is this the age? Is the age of the gimmicky peripheral over? Is there no hope for weirdos like me who love these things and think they have the potential to make gaming more fun and exciting? Yeah, I think that this era is over. I do think, again, like I was saying earlier, I think there is a narrow window where maybe retailers are so desperate to get something on shelves related to video games as the digital shift happens more and more, that there is another window where some of these controllers and peripherals might make sense, but I don't know that it's certainly not guaranteed. Because at the end of the day, people want to make games that people can play. People want to make games that people can buy and play. And adding in plastic instruments or some of this other stuff just adds a hurdle that makes it more difficult to play those games at all, let alone appreciate them. And so when you have like, I need my Buzz trivia controllers to play Buzz, like it's stuff that they would rather just make a different game that might not be as good, but it can address a larger possible audience. And I think that's kind of how, that it's going to kind of stay that way. Jackbox, right? I mean, not that Jackbox would have weird peripherals. It'd be kind of cool if it did. Like, imagine if they just said like, hey, we've made the most fucked up Jackbox game ever. Every single different game requires a bespoke, insane controller. Here's TKO 3, and here's a fake silk screening controller to use with TKO 3. That would be fantastic. Jackbox, yeah, the new Jackbox just came out. I have not been keeping up with it. The last handful of them, but this one has TKO 2, and I want to make some t-shirts. So I don't know, maybe one of these days we'll stream some more. We'll stream some Jackbox or do something with it. I played they have a full on. Speaking of actually, hey, the rhythm games and plastic controllers. There is a rhythm game, a multiplayer rhythm game in Jackbox 10 where you very quickly sync it up to the stream that you're watching. And it has like 5-lane keyboard-based gameplay if you're playing on a PC, or, I guess it would be 5 lanes of tapping on your phone, which would, be, I think, less good. But I played it on a regular keyboard. And that's pretty cool. It actually, the first time I played 2 rounds of it, and the first time it did not work very well at all. And the second time it just synced up better and worked. Maybe the downside of it is at the end of it, it's like, now you can download an MP3 of because there are, other players are also playing with you at the same time, and they're playing different instruments. And at the end, you can download an MP3 of your performance. I'm like, I don't I don't actually want to do that. I don't need to hear this ever again. Just give me the score and I'm good. But still a neat, weird idea. Yeah, so I think that even in that situation, they're making a rhythm game that just is played with a keyboard. Like, you know. So there's that as well. So I don't know. The world of plastic instruments, it's hard to imagine it coming back in any way, shape, or form. Liz from the UK writes in, I can't vouch for this personally, but you know, we were talking about Bandcamp and the future thereof. And I was talking about how, man, it seems like someone should build a new Bandcamp. Itch isn't quite the answer. They could develop it into the answer, I suppose, if they wanted to better serve music on that platform. But Liz writes in and says, I was listening to your most recent podcast where you talked about Bandcamp and how the community is ready for competition to come along now that Epic have fucked it. Well, it already happened. I'm part of a couple of online music communities where we were all big fans of Bandcamp, and we were recently made aware of Artcore. It says artcore.com, which seems to be exactly the kind of thing you were talking about. It's early days there. Development only started last year, according to the About page. But it looks promising, and a bunch of smaller artists have begun putting their work there. I'm not affiliated anyway. I just know a couple of independent artists who have started using it and would really like to see more platforms like this take off, especially now that we might be losing Bandcamp. Yeah, so I don't know. Artcore.com might be worth checking out if you're a musician who has music on Bandcamp and you're looking for somewhere else to put it. It's one of those, you know, it's one of those non-exclusive things that unless the terms are terrible, I guess why wouldn't you just put your music everywhere you could? Good to know. I will take a look at Artcore. I don't really have music that I need to put anywhere, but I guess I could. Let's see. Andrew sent me a bunch of photos of a retro video game store in New York that is closing. And he says, everything is half off. Do you want me to get you anything? I'm probably good. I'm probably good. Thank you though for thinking of me. Because the TurboGrafx, you sent a picture. The TurboGrafx is $500, but I think everything is 50% off. If that TurboGrafx is $500, that's why that store is going out of business. Holy shit. $500 for a TurboGrafx. I mean, if it's sealed, I don't know what a sealed in package. Okay, yeah, it's got the box. It's not sealed. But no, I'm okay. I'm okay. He does not list the name of the store. Some people were asking what's the name of the store. But apparently it's closing on the 31st. So there's some retro video game store in New York that is closing on the 31st. So if you want to try to get in there and make something happen, feel free. But I don't have any more details than that to any of you here. Let's see if we have any more emails here. I need to go to this view to find the emails. Silas from Brisbane writes in and says, with the announcement of the PlayStation 5 Slim and its detachable disc drive, and in conjunction with the already released digital PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S, do you think this is the last generation of consoles that will launch with a disc drive? What are the chances that the PlayStation 6 is completely digital or the Xbox Series? And then he just trails off. He wrote Xbox Series and then did not finish. Like, I don't know what the fuck they call it. I'd actually be more than keen on going fully digital, but often games in Australia are 25% more expensive digitally than physical retail copies. Physical also goes on sale far quicker. For instance, Spider-Man 2 is currently 125 Australian dollars on the PlayStation Store, but retails for 99 Australian dollars as a physical retail product. PlayStation exclusive games have had a premium price this generation in Australia. Third-party games like the upcoming Modern Warfare 3 retail for as low as 79 Australian dollars for physical, which is actually only $50, including all American, including all taxes. But the digital version is 109 Australian dollars. Love the idea of digital, not in love with the pricing disparity. Well, Silas, I've got good news for you. When that pricing disparity is fixed, they will fix it by just raising all of the prices. They're not going to lower the digital ones. But they will fix the disparity one way or the other eventually by either getting rid of the physical games or saying, no, fuck this. Charge the right amount. That sucks. If you're in Australia, that sucks. And I don't know that. I don't mean that in a general sense. Australia always seemed cool to me, man. Until we started talking about giant spiders and fucking these dingoes. They're out there doing to babies. It's sick. But until we started talking about that stuff, I don't know. Australia always seemed cool to me. Seemed like Australians always seemed cool to me. You ever see Crocodile Dundee? That fucking guy, man. That guy had a knife. And, koala bears. I don't know. They seem neat. They seem cute. I always thought koala bears were kind of cool. Fosters. Big, tall, big, thick can of Fosters. Boomerangs. I don't understand how boomerangs work. They say if you throw them right, they come back, but I don't know how the fuck that works. Taco Bill. Hungry Jack. Like, all this awesome stuff. I don't know. Australia always seemed cool and intriguing and neat to me. And I don't know. I think positively about Australians. I don't know why. I just do. They talk cool. It's because they talk cool. And they seem like they can fucking party. It's not like the British where they're all like, you have the posh kind of proper British accent and then you've got the you've got the like more chavved out British folks that you actually want to hang out with. Australians just seem like they like to fucking get fucked up and hang out. I'm sure that's a gross generalization, but Australians seem like they know how to have a good time. And I feel like a lot of people in the United Kingdom very much know how to have a good time. And then there are some people looking at those people going, about it. Dragon juice. Buckfast. Anyway. That's how the world works, right? Anyway. Matt from Columbus writes in. It says, I've recently been spending more time going through my Steam recommendations and discovery queue, and I'm regularly recommended games like Dead by Daylight and Phasmophobia, despite having no interest in that type of game. Presumably, this is because I play a lot of Hunt Showdown. On paper, the tags, horror and multiplayer, have a lot of overlap, but are really not all that alike. Similarly, I play a lot of Dota, so Steam constantly recommends me games with the free-to-play tag, despite that being completely irrelevant to what I enjoy about last-hitting creeps. Just wondering if you have any thoughts around the game discovery problem, especially with AI and language learning models in the mix these days. Yeah, right? I think it's a long-held belief across the entire video game industry for at least the last console generation, if not two, that discovery is broken on storefronts Whether it be Steam, Steam actually, I think at least is trying to. I think Steam has ideas about it. But I feel like PSN, I feel like the Xbox store is like a little bit better than PSN, but not by much. And I'm not even talking about discovery. I'm talking about finding what the fuck you're looking for and putting new releases up high where you might see them because you're likely to be going to the store. Like when the Call of Duty open beta was getting going and I needed to go to the store to pre-order a copy of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, I had to dig just a little deeper than it seems like you should, considering the popularity and relevance of that. It's tempting to say, oh, that's because Microsoft owns it. But no, it is more likely that the PlayStation Store, I feel like on the PS5 especially, has been really... Remember at launch when the PS5 store hit and then didn't get updated for like a long time? Like there were just aspects of it that were frozen in time for like months. It's terrible. The eShop is overrun by like fake hentai games that like are going on, and maybe I don't know if it's still this way, but for the longest time there, it was like these games that were launching at weird price points, and then like saying, "Oh, this game's $70," and you're like, "Oh, but it's on sale for 99 cents," and so that way it floats to the top of like, "Look at these deals." The Nintendo store is just a fucking disaster because everyone's trying to game the system and you don't have people on the... I feel like Valve doesn't always respond as quickly as you like with, you know, it's taken them how many years to even start to address some of the Team Fortress 2 problems that have been lingering for a long time. But when it comes to store stuff, you at least get the impression that there are people on the other side of the conversation that are lurking behind the scenes at Valve trying to make sure that no one is gaming the system too hard, you know, and trying to figure it out. I don't think that their news sections, I don't think their trending sections, I don't think their tag-based stuff works as well as you want to, for a lot of the reasons why Matt is saying. Because tags like free to play, like who, you know, okay, that matters to some people in certain contexts, but it is not the thing that people would like about Dota 2. If you like Dota 2, you don't automatically like other free-to-play games. You're sick in the head. The amount of money you have lost by the hours you have spent playing Dota 2 is far more than people pay for, you know, full-price video games. And there are so many games coming out all the time now. Now everyone is self-publishing, so there's not a lot of... It doesn't feel like there's a ton of curation in terms of like, hey, we want to make sure that there's enough games coming out this week and this week and this week. And, you know, why don't we move this to here? And, you know, the Xbox Live Arcade slot system of putting out one game a week sucked. But it gave all of those games a spotlight and a focus that no game gets anymore, especially at that indie, the smaller level that a lot of those games come in at, you know. So that, like, there is that slight upside to it, right? But like nowadays, everyone can self-publish, and that's the right move. But it just means that every day you look at the new page on Steam. Every day you say, "What the fuck came out?" You know, it's not like, "Hey, Thursday is here, and here's the weekly PSN store update." Instead, it's just like a torrent of new games being blasted into your damn stupid face every minute of the day and night. And a lot of them are terrible. I don't want to like have like a qualitative conversation. I don't want to ever say those games shouldn't be allowed to be published on play. You know, like that's a real stupid solution to the problem, to just say like some games shouldn't be allowed to come out. I agree there should be a level of quality control, but I don't think that that's what we're talking about here. So how do you get people connected with their next video game? That's the question we're actually trying to solve. Is you're playing something now, what will you play next? And what dictates that? If it's a big game, it might be dictated by a marketing campaign. You may have already pre-ordered a game. You already know what your next game is. It might be that you read. It used to be that was a big part of GameSpot as a service. We talk about it as an editorial operation, but like ultimately that editorial was designed to serve an audience. And depending on where you sat in that building, some people would say that GameSpot's most important purpose was to hook people up to their next game, to help them discover the next game that they want to play. That's not to say to force a bad game on them. That's not to say, like the reviews are there to put in place to help you be smarter about your next purchasing decision. And hey, we're going to give you details about what's out. The price checking affiliate link end of the business is there to say, here's where you can buy your next game and you might get it for cheaper here, which is theoretically of some value to someone somewhere. But a lot of it was like, that was the problem. Whether we admitted it to ourselves or not, that was one of the problems that a site like GameSpot was trying to solve. With reviews and previews and a lot of this other stuff. It wasn't about like, hey, this pre-order campaign just started. That's marketing. That's advertising. We don't give a fuck. Like that's, if they want to buy ads to say pre-order now, fine. I'm not here writing previews saying, and click here to pre-order, because that's fucking insane. But at the end of the day, that's a big part of what that type of editorial can do, is to help players find their next game. You could argue that we were fucking terrible at it. I think that we were good at it in some ways, and probably bad. It got worse as more and more games started coming out, because the problem you run into is editorial sites like that simply cannot afford to hire enough people. For that machine to work, you have to have an even level of coverage across all games. You need to review everything within some form of reason, but you need to be able to have like enough content on every single game out there for someone, because someone is going to think that's their next game. And if you're like already saying, fuck that game, we're not even going to bother covering it, then they're not going to know. They're less informed. And so the idea was always like to try to get people to get more out of the games they were playing, and to move along from game to game, to find the next game that they were going to love. And reviews were there, and or save them money. That's how I always viewed it, being in the reviews department, is that my job was in a lot of ways to save people money. Because you see a lot of marketing, you read a lot of really rosy previews, or a lot of really neutrally written previews even, about a game that say, hey man, this is going to be an amazing, this one's looking like a banger. For me, it was always like, hey, there's a lot of like, I guess propaganda is maybe, but there's a lot of marketing out there trying to push you into buying games. Some of these games are bad. Some of these games we think editorially you should not buy. And sometimes that comes with caveats like, oh, unless you're this type of person who likes this type of game, or hey, maybe you should wait for a sale to buy this, or maybe, there's varying degrees of recommendation, right? But at the end of the day, I always viewed it as there are millions and millions of dollars being spent to try to convince you that this game is your next game. I am a guy who was hired for $24,000 a year back in 1996. And I was the person writing most of the reviews. It was me against millions of dollars of marketing. And, I made more money there as time went on. By the time I was gone, by the time they got me out of there, I think I had maybe even made it up to the incredibly low six-figure range. I don't know. But even with that, decade plus of raises in mind and promotions or whatever, the marketing budgets only got bigger. And so I'm a department of 2 to 3 people internally who are reviewers, and I'm a freelance budget, which most of that went to Frank Provo so that he could tell you that a lot of these Game Boy Color games are bad. Actually, GBA, I think, was really Frank's kind of heyday. But against, again, these massive and increasing marketing budgets that were getting bigger all the time and more mainstream as games became more popular. That stuff just, the enthusiast press wasn't even necessary. You could argue that this is part of the problem, right? It's just not necessary anymore because now you've got Call of Duty games debuting at the NBA finals or, and now they just debut them in game. But for a while there, it was like a commercial during a basketball game was how they announced what the next Call of Duty was going to be. Millions and millions and millions of dollars purely for marketing. And it felt like we were the small handful of people. We were the fucking ragtag weirdos off to the side saying, hey, some of these games are shit, man. Fuck, dude. Like, don't. They are trying to convince you that this game is like a Halo killer. Motherfucker, it is not. I don't think anyone can do that anymore. And that's not me saying like because we were so good at it. It's because there were fewer games. And I don't think that people even have the budgets and the team size to cover the games we used to cover, let alone the increased output of the video game industry. And so you eventually reach a point there where you're just like, you can't do it. All you can do is all you can do. And so even the biggest sites out there, the IGNs and the GameSpots of the world, can only cover a fraction of those games. And on the other side, you've got a situation where a lot of those smaller games don't have a marketing budget at all. So there's less kind of, shit in the water or whatever. But the democratization of streaming and YouTube and all that other stuff also democratized game coverage in a lot of weird ways, obviously. I don't know that I necessarily need to rehash that, but if you want to see footage of a game, you can find it. Generally, there are very few games that come out where you literally cannot find a single second of footage of it. Someone's always going to do something. There's someone streaming it and archiving it to YouTube somewhere. Especially when they get wind it's bad. Like that Skull Island, this King Kong game, where there's a story going around that I guess some people from the studio came out and said, yeah, they gave us like a year and a lot of that was crunch because they didn't give us the resources to do it. Game Mill put it out, which is I believe Game Mill is the Big Rigs publisher. So that's a stamp of quality for sure. And so I think for what we think of as the enthusiast press, which is, again, GameSpot and IGN qualifies that, and everything smaller than that certainly does as well, generally. You are speaking to a more informed audience than the person who just hears Assassin's Creed is coming out, dog. And they're like, oh, fuck, bro, let's fucking vape and play Assassin's Creed. Well, I don't even know who is this person. I'm inventing in my head. It's perfect. But you know what I mean? Like there's people who have like certain, attachment to this medium, and they are better informed than the average consumer because they listen to podcasts, because they have a favorite streamer who streams a lot of games and whatever else. That has its own caveats, obviously, with who's getting paid and who's, sponsored streams and all that stuff. But let's sidestep that because we'll be here all goddamn day. But at the end of the day, I think that, there are just so many different ways to get some kind of information about a game. And the people that are doing that are generally a little better informed And they are able to watch footage of a game, watch someone play a game, and learn something from it. They don't just watch it uncritically and go like, "Huh, that guy shot that guy." You know, like they're able to go like, "This is maybe not the game for me." They're able to kind of figure it out based on footage of a game. And so the value of the written review is that's part of why that's gone down, right? Also, you have way more mainstream coverage of games, which is a good thing in a general sense, where, you know, we're seeing, it's not amazing, but we are seeing some better coverage of games and technology in some mainstream publications. And in some ways, I think that's the stuff that's another thing that eats away at the overall viewership of, or the overall audience of an IGN or a GameSpot, because back in the 2000s they were the most mainstream you could get in terms of numbers. Like, I feel fairly certain that like GameSpot in the early 2000s was doing more traffic every day than people who were watching G4. Or whatever Spike was doing outside of I'm sure the Game Awards that they ran on Spike for a number of years probably did just fine, but in a general sense, day-to-day average stuff, like we were reaching over 1 million people every day, which was a big number then in some ways, and would probably be a big number for them now. But now when you go and Google game reviews, there's a zillion different options from mainstream outlets that probably have slightly better SEO. If you're looking for a game name, you might just end up on a YouTube page with the official trailer, and that sort of stuff. Whereas it used to be that GameSpot and IGN were the largest and most authoritative voices in the space. And so the search engines would serve them up quite well, because you didn't have like the Washington Post writing about video games ever. So I guess I don't know that they do much of that anymore either. You don't have like Bloomberg having dedicated video games reporters, right? Like that's stuff that was not a thing then. And so GameSpot and IGN were able to thrive on that. But also it meant that GameSpot and IGN, we were reaching that mainstream audience of players that didn't know what they were doing and didn't have the context to. And so that's why those reviews were useful for those people. It's also why we ran features that were just like, here are the holiday picks for dads and grads, because you might just end up on this webpage and you don't know anything about games, but you're there to buy a gift for someone. And you want to be more informed to buy that gift, and so on and so forth, right? So there was value there too. But anyway, whatever. Discovery is fucking broken, and I don't think there's a way to fix it. I don't think AI or language learning models will fix it. I used to be obsessed with this as a problem computers could fix. I used to think that like that was something that, when we were building features into Giant Bomb. This even goes back to GameSpot, that I looked at GameSpot as like, we're doing a fucking shit job of categorizing games in ways that like we need to be able to say this game is similar to this game. And at a human level, we can do that, but there are so many games coming out. We need to be able to draw these similarities in some kind of algorithmic, like we need to be able to define a game in more granular terms than just it's a shooter, because that's something we can try to use to categorize these games into smaller and smaller buckets in ways that make them easier. That, hey, we can recommend these things like, hey, we think this might be your next new game because you told us you played and liked this game. If this was a game you played and liked, this is probably one you will like. And the human element is the most important thing there, but like that was spiraling out of our control. And so you ended up in this situation where you're just like, fuck man, we need to, can machines do this? And so I spent a long time I wanted to, I built a whole taxonomy for GameSpot in probably 2001 or 2 that I just started doing. I was just like, this is a problem we need to solve. And it was, I've talked about it before because it was insane. Like I look at it, or I don't have it anymore, unfortunately. But like when I think about what it was a tag cloud kind of thing because that was the era. But it was this idea of just like, this game has dirt in it. It was something that, kind of like the concept pages and some of the more esoteric wiki pages on Giant Bomb kind of leaned into this in similar ways, but we never used that data to say, here's a game that's like this game. I really wanted to get to that point. Because it was like, okay, here, like, what are the list of concepts that are attached to this game? What's the game that's closest to this one based on these wiki page attachments? And is that a good recommendation or not? And at least start to test it. But we were never able to get there, unfortunately. But like, I got really crazy. Like, it's one of those things where like, if you had found me, it would have been fucking like, I got a cork board and lines going, okay, we don't ever have the term mud as a definitive term because instead we'll just say the game has dirt and it has water. And then the system will infer that might mean mud and be able to recommend other mud games. It was fucked up, man. It was fucked up. I spent a lot of time showing it to no one. And that's how it always got super fucking crazy. I never really even formally presented it because I spent so much time with it and then started bouncing the bigger picture idea off of people for like, what if GameSpot did this? What if GameSpot did this? And there just wasn't enough bandwidth there, enough interest there. Like the engineers were fighting. Like at the time we were owned by ZDNet and the site was going to shit because of the things that the parent company was forcing onto us from a CMS perspective. It was fucked. Super fucked. So, there's none of it ever lined up. And then when it came time to design the wiki stuff for Giant Bomb, that was just Comic Vine. Comic Vine already existed. They had tested a lot of those concepts out on Comic Vine. And so we just used similar, we maybe had like 1 or 2 page types that they didn't have, but it was generally just like, here's Comic Vine, but the site, it has a black background and it is about video games. In terms of just like its overall structure and stuff like that. The mistakes made on Giant Bomb in the early days were around the releases and entering release dates into the wiki and keeping track of release dates and trying to be and the way credits are stored. It's a lot of stuff that is in some ways the right answer, except it made the site harder to edit and use. And so fewer people made edits to the wiki because there was a right way to enter release dates that involved you going and having all of this other data and being like, well, it runs at 1080p and it runs at this and it runs at that, and having to have all of these other details about each version of the game. And so, when I did a lot of that stuff in, 2007, well, I guess we didn't really start until early 2008. I was very much like, this is how we do it in a way that's right. This is the correct way to do this. And then later on, I learned like, no, the correct way to do all this is a way that users actually use. And if we have to constantly be writing rule books and all this other stuff for wikis and wait, if we've made it not intuitive to edit by anyone, we've failed. And so I feel like we failed pretty hard with that wiki. We made a lot of changes to it over the years that fixed a lot of the bullshit. Which when I say bullshit, I mean a lot of the bad ideas I had in 2008. But getting resources. That's a whole whatever. That's a whole separate conversation. Convincing a company to care about a thing is a different story. But yeah, I don't know. So when the sickness strikes again, and I am able to convince someone else that it is time to build a video game wiki, this time I have all the answers. Also, Moby Games got a lot better. Moby Games was real bad in 07, 08. And they've gotten a lot better at, just they redesigned the site. They did a lot to Moby Games over the years. But the thing we always heard from game developers were like, yeah, I'm the person trying to submit these edits to my Moby Games page, and they are saying no, even though I'm the person, it was me, and I'm proving, like, here's the screenshots of my credits, and they're still, like, turning me down. What the fuck? Like, people, they loosened up a lot of stuff on Moby Games submissions in ways that fixed a lot of those problems. But at the time, talking to game developers, we heard a lot of people that were just like, they suck. They are fucking terrible. They are horrible to work with. We love what you're doing over here. I was like, great, awesome. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Moby Games is a much better site now. Also, Atari owns it now, which doesn't sound, I don't know. That's when I think about the longevity of a wiki, of a community effort like that. One of the things I feel fairly strongly about these days, given the past, is a company can't own it. It can't be something that it has to be it probably has to be a nonprofit. Like, there has to be things in place that cannot be revoked. That wiki, the Giant Bomb used to have very open terms in terms of who owned your submissions, and it was you. And there was a lot of language in place around protecting that stuff. And a lot of that language went away at some point. And I don't know when that happened. Fat Scout asked, do you have any thoughts about how for the longest time Twitch scraped all of their box art stuff from the Giant Bomb wiki? They had a licensing agreement with us. They paid us to do that. Which was great, because that was another great thing you could say about that wiki was like, hey, we want to be a data source for other companies. We want to have good enough data to do this. The thing that happened with Twitch, as far as I can tell, they went and bought another wiki site, and then they owned that site for about a year, and then they did not renew our agreement. The site they bought, that actually did scrape a fair amount of text and data and stuff from the Giant Bomb wiki. There was like individuals, like little paragraphs, little words, little things in there that you're like, oh, you just copied this out of you. Maybe you use the API or whatever. So the idea that Twitch went from licensing this data to buying someone who had kind of taken it is a little weird. The good news about all that is that I don't have to fucking care about any of it anymore. And I fucking don't. Congratulations to Twitch and the IGDB. For all of this stuff. There are no good video game wikis out there that are being actively maintained and developed and all of that stuff. And that's really frustrating, because I've been looking, whether it's the IGDB or Glitchwave or some of the other things that are out there. Moby is probably still the best, like, most complete quality data source. in terms of the types of data it stores and maintains. The IGDB is not bad, but it's weird. I like the site itself is weird. The site itself is a thing you look at and go like, what this is. I get why this is here in terms of it serving the Twitch database and their needs and all that other stuff. Like that's a perfect relationship. They were right to do what they did. It makes total sense. But in terms of databases that are being actively worked on and that engineers are able to update and fix and like new features, there's not a ton of stuff. There are like ones out there that are like very complete. Like, yeah, World of Spectrum is great for Spectrum games. Lemon 64 is great for Commodore 64 stuff. The Atari Mania is pretty decently complete. And so you have these individual pockets of data around this stuff. But I'm thinking about, something that's going to try to maintain the history of games and try to really tackle it all. Moby is kind of it. And Moby doesn't really have a lot of leeway for fun, for cool, weird stuff. Cool, weird pages in the database. That was always my favorite stuff. Like people contributed amazing stuff during my tenure there. It always blew me away to see people like I just wanted to hire Marino. They wouldn't go for it. They would not. The push for a dedicated wiki maintainer / Matt Rory's right hand man, like all that was yeah. It gets away from you, man. Frustrating. But I think the wiki space, the video game wiki space is crummy. Laid on. Matt Rory is he left to go to he's working at a game developer now. They put out that hockey game. What is that hockey game called? Take the Ticket. No, Tape to Tape. Tape to Tape. That is the name of the game. Null Games, I believe, is the name of the studio that he's at right now. I heard from Matt Rory relatively recently after the birth of my third child. Matt Rory got in touch. Hello to Matt Rory. We love Matt Rory. Anyway, I'm just rambling about fucking nonsense here at the end of the show again. I'm sorry, I didn't necessarily mean to get off on these weird tangents all over again. But I guess like suffice to say, like I have a whole lot of thoughts about what a website about video games, the history of all video games, not just current video games, what that looks like. And it would be fun to do that again someday. It's also incredibly foolish that I feel that way. It's a fool's errand. But at the same time, I it's something I feel really strongly about. But it doesn't solve the discovery problem. To get back to Joe in Seattle's email, the thing I've learned is that no amount of taxonomy, no amount of breaking video games down into their component parts in ways that an LLM or ways that an AI would try to look at games to try to recommend other games to you, none of that works as well as it needs to, because games are similar in ways that don't include their quality, and games look wildly different on paper that you can look at and go like, oh, well, this game's a lot like this game, just not in obvious ways. And so when it comes to trying to contain all of that stuff and try to do it in an auto magic way, if you're doing it with human labor, then it's then it's moderators, and then it's like, okay, is someone just writing this in, and are they fucking lying? Are they doing this? How do we vet these recommendations? How do we do this? Like that's a process too. It's a much messier process. It's not as elegant as like we built a machine that dissects video games that I wish I spent a long time wishing that would work, but it just doesn't. And it's a good thing because it means that video games have diversified in so many wild ways. Like you could probably do it with like SNES games. If you really broke apart 8-bit and 16-bit games, you could probably build something that could make pretty good recommendations because you'd have all these other data points and other data sources you could pull in around user reviews and types of game and blah, blah, blah. But like now you've got so many different indie games, big and small. Quality is all over the place. Quality also changes as games get patched, and so you'd have to figure out the right way to address that sort of stuff, and it gets tricky fast. It gets really hard really fast. It's a stupid hard problem to solve, and I don't think AI I don't think AI helps the problem because I think that you could build an algorithm that did it based on percentages of similarity and all of that other stuff. So do I think movie recommendation sites work well? No. Other than in the like most baseline way that you would not need, you don't need, hey, did you like the actor in this? Here's something else that actor was in that was also well regarded. Like that's not rocket science. You know? Like if you're like, hey man, did you like the Beverly Hills Cop movies? You might sort of like Metro. You will probably like 48 Hours. That's something that you don't need. I don't need a robot to tell me shit like that. And so I don't know. Movies do more with genre or, mainstream movies anyway. I don't know. It's like how do you, because on paper, without using the terms like Souls like you would go like, oh, hey, do you like Dark Souls? Well, here's another third-person action adventure game that you might like with slight horror and gothic thing, like whatever. The recommendations would be wrong because you'd have to account for so many different things like that. But anyway, I think you need a human touch to that stuff to get it to actually work, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of building machines that do it in the first place. So that's it for me. I'm going to go. Everyone have a good Tuesday. I'll be back on Friday. We'll play some 8-bit Nintendo games. I streamed last night. And I might do it again, motherfucker. I don't know. My schedule is really, really, really all over the place right now with a newborn in the house and my daughter going off to preschool for the first time and stuff. I'm trying to figure out what everything looks like going forward. So, might see some more night streams out of me. We might night stream some Spider-Man, some other kind of more recent releases might end up in the night stream zone, in the night zone. And then we come back on Friday for some 8-bit Nintendo games. Yeah, City Skylines. Is that out? Is that out today? I heard it's bad. I saw that they put out a message on the eve of the game's release to say, oh yeah, it's got issues because we only wanted it to run at 30 frames a second. Which is a interesting way to phrase that. Anyway, I have not seen that at all. I am very interested in seeing it. User reviews are mostly negative. That sucks. Oh well. That seems like a game where they will get there. No mod support at launch. Like, okay, yeah. Anyway. Have a good rest of your week. If you're looking for me during daylight hours, 10 a.m. Friday is I'll plan to be here. We'll play some Nintendo games. If the schedule gets that so crazy that doesn't even work, then we'll do some nighttime Nintendo games. My nights are weird now. They're real weird, but I get into it a little bit on that. The Super Mario Wonder video is up on YouTube right now. Go check that out. That game's fantastic, and I also talk a little bit about why my nights are a little weirder now than they were. So stay tuned, everybody. Thanks for watching. Read more about it over at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. You can sign up, support this weird train as it chugs along and does whatever the hell it's doing. We're gearing up for the next Game Boys to Men here in the relatively near future. I think Glenn is out of town this week. We will get back on that ASAP and make it happen. So stay tuned, everybody. Patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. And that Mario video is up over on YouTube. I think you can type in guard.bike and get to the YouTube channel. I forget. Anyway, if you're just listening to the podcast, then I'll be back next week to talk about my exploits in the world of video games. See you soon.